There are places where the world grows unexpectedly quiet. Not because the wind has stopped, nor because the birds have fallen silent, but because something deep within the landscape seems to be listening. As evening settles across the hills, the familiar world softens. The edges of ancient forests blur into lavender mist, and the last golden light lingers upon weathered stones that have watched countless generations pass beneath the changing sky. Perhaps you have stood in such a place yourself, a lonely path winding between old trees, a still lake holding the moon in its reflection, a circle of standing stones rising from the earth with no obvious purpose, yet somehow seeming exactly where they belong. Places like these have a way of slowing our footsteps, inviting us to linger just a little longer before continuing on. As the daylight quietly fades, the mist begins its gentle work. It gathers along riverbanks, curls around forgotten hills, and drifts through the branches of ancient hawthorn trees. Familiar landmarks seem softer now, their outlines less certain than they were only moments before. It becomes strangely easy to imagine that another path might appear, one noticed only by those who are willing to walk without hurrying. Welcome to the Sleepy Legends channel, where together we wander through the quiet landscapes of mythology, folklore, history, and forgotten legend. If these peaceful journeys bring a little calm to the end of your day, I'd love to invite you to like this video, subscribe, and perhaps leave a comment to let us know where you're listening from or which stories you'd enjoy exploring together in future evenings. It is always a pleasure to discover how many fellow travelers gather here from every corner of the world. Tonight, our journey carries us toward one of the oldest mysteries ever whispered beside a fireside. Long before maps were carefully drawn or forests carefully measured, people spoke of another world resting quietly beside our own. It was never thought to be far away, only hidden. A place glimpsed through morning fog, beneath moonlit hills, beside ancient springs, or beyond a doorway that somehow seemed older than memory itself. For generations, people across Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Brittany, and beyond believed that certain places belonged to more than one world at once. Most days they appeared perfectly ordinary. Yet on quiet evenings, during the turning of the seasons, or beneath the silver light of the full moon, the veil between worlds seemed just a little thinner. Those who wandered carefully sometimes returned with remarkable stories. Others simply came home with the quiet certainty that they had brushed against a mystery they would never fully explain. So this evening, there is no need to hurry. Leave the familiar road behind for a little while. Follow the narrow path disappearing into the mist, where every bend invites another quiet discovery, and every ancient hill seems to be waiting with a story of its own. Beyond the veil, the hidden world of the Fae has been waiting for us all along. The path continues beneath the shelter of ancient trees, where the last light of evening filters softly through branches heavy with moss. The air feels cooler here. A gentle breeze stirs the ferns, and somewhere deeper in the forest comes the faint sound of music. It is so distant that it could almost be mistaken for the wind itself, yet its quiet melody lingers just long enough to invite another listening pause. Stories like this have echoed across the Celtic lands for centuries. A traveler hears laughter where no one can be found, Someone catches sight of a figure in pale clothing disappearing behind an old oak, only to discover there is no one there when they arrive. Others speak of beautiful singing drifting across a lonely hillside after sunset, so clear and inviting that it seems impossible not to follow. Whether these moments were tricks of light, imagination, or something far older has remained one of folklore's gentlest mysteries. Across Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and Brittany, generations quietly shared these experiences with neighbors and family. They were not told as grand adventures or fearful warnings, but as simple memories of ordinary people who had noticed something they could never quite explain. Over time, these stories settled into the landscape itself, becoming part of ancient forests, hidden valleys, lonely shorelines, and grassy hills that seemed somehow different from every place around them. Certain places came to be treated with quiet respect. A solitary hawthorn standing in an open field, a clear spring emerging from beneath old stones, a ring of weathered standing stones where the evening seemed to arrive just a little sooner than elsewhere. These were places where people paused without quite knowing why. They lowered their voices. They walked a little more carefully. They listened. The stories often shared another curious detail. Those who heard the distant music rarely found its source. Those who followed the gentle laughter often discovered only an empty hillside waiting beneath the moon. A traveler might glimpse movement between the trees, yet find nothing except drifting mist when they looked again. It was these fleeting moments, forever hovering between certainty and imagination, that gave the hidden world its quiet power. Rather than asking whether the Fae truly existed, many people accepted a gentler possibility. Perhaps another world rested quietly beside their own, close enough that every now and then, its music, its laughter, and its unseen inhabitants brushed softly against the edges of everyday life before slipping beyond the veil once more. The music drifts softly across the hillside once more, carried upon the evening breeze, until it becomes difficult to tell where the melody ends and the whispering wind begins. The old path grows strangely quiet, and even the branches of the hawthorn seem content to rest beneath the silver glow of the moon. As your eyes wander toward the crest of the hill, you become aware of someone standing there. It is impossible to say when the figure appeared, for there is no sudden movement or dramatic arrival. Instead, it feels as though they have been part of the landscape all along, patiently waiting to be noticed. The stranger is tall and slender, wrapped in a flowing cloak whose pale green folds blend almost perfectly with the grasses around them. Long hair catches the moonlight like strands of polished silver, while every graceful movement seems slow enough to belong to another age. Nothing about the figure feels hurried, and nothing feels out of place. Their beauty is difficult to explain. It is not simply the beauty of youth, nor the perfection celebrated in poetry, but something quieter and more enduring. The face carries no sign of worry or weariness, and the eyes seem to hold memories older than the hills themselves. For a brief moment, the stranger looks in your direction. There is neither fear nor invitation in that gentle gaze, only a quiet curiosity, as though the two of you have unexpectedly crossed paths upon an ancient road that both have traveled for a very long time. Then a ribbon of mist drifts slowly between you, and when it passes, the hillside is empty once again. Stories remarkably similar to this have been told throughout the Celtic lands for centuries. They were shared beside winter fires, repeated during long walks across lonely moors, and quietly remembered whenever someone thought they had seen more than the ordinary world could easily explain. In Ireland, these mysterious neighbors became known simply as the Sidhe. People believed they lived beneath the ancient green hills that rose across the countryside, entering and leaving their hidden homes through doorways concealed within the earth. Most of the time they remained unseen, yet many believed there were rare moments when the veil between worlds became thin enough for an unexpected meeting. Travel north into the Highlands of Scotland, and the stories continue with surprising familiarity. There, people spoke of the Du Yanshi, hidden neighbors who shared many of the same qualities. They were described as graceful, ageless, and deeply connected to the old hills, the quiet glens, and the places where mist lingered long after sunrise. Crossing into Wales, another name begins to appear. Storytellers spoke of the Tylwyth Teg whose beauty, music, and effortless elegance became woven into countless tales. Shepherds claimed to hear distant melodies upon still evenings, while travelers sometimes caught sight of radiant figures dancing beneath the moon before vanishing as silently as they had appeared. Although the names change from one Celtic land to another, the descriptions remained astonishingly consistent. Again and again, people spoke of tall and beautiful beings who seemed almost human, yet carried an unmistakable sense that they belonged to an older and quieter world existing just beyond ordinary sight. Perhaps that is why these stories endured for so many generations. They were never presented as grand adventures or distant legends, but as quiet encounters that might happen to anyone who wandered a lonely path, paused beside an ancient hill, or listened carefully when unfamiliar music drifted across the evening air. As our own journey continues, we will discover that these beautiful strangers were only the first inhabitants of a hidden world far more varied than it first appears. Some inspired wonder, some offered kindness, and a few demanded great caution, but all belonged to the mysterious realm that generations of storytellers believed existed just beyond the veil. The forest slowly gives way to open country once again, and before long the path begins to climb a gentle hillside. It is not especially steep, nor is it remarkable in any obvious way. Wild grasses ripple softly in the breeze, small white flowers nod among the stones, and a lone hawthorn spreads its branches near the summit, just as it may have done for hundreds of years. To an unfamiliar traveler, it would seem like any other green hill. To those who lived here long ago, it was something altogether different. Across Ireland, countless rounded hills like this were believed to be entrances to another world. They were not imagined as ordinary burial mounds or curious landmarks left by forgotten ancestors. Many believed these quiet places were the homes of the Sidhe, hidden beneath the earth yet existing alongside the world of sunlight and rain. People often describe these hills as hollow within, though not in the way we might imagine a cave or a tunnel. Instead, they spoke of vast chambers filled with warmth and light, where seasons never seemed to change and music echoed through magnificent halls beyond human understanding. Time itself was said to flow differently there. moving so gently that a single evening of celebration might become many years in the world above. No one claimed to see these hidden halls every day. Rather, they appeared only during rare and unexpected moments. A doorway might reveal itself where moments before there had been only a grassy hillside. A great stone could slowly swing aside without the touch of human hands. The earth itself might seem to open beneath the glow of the full moon, inviting a fortunate, or perhaps unfortunate, traveler to step inside. Stories like these were told so often that certain hills acquired lasting reputations. Families learned their names. Children were warned not to wander too close after sunset. Shepherds quietly avoided disturbing the slopes, especially during Samhain, when the boundary between worlds was believed to grow especially thin. Many of these places still exist today. Walk through the Irish countryside and you will find ancient green mounds rising quietly above the fields, just as they have for thousands of years. Archaeologists recognize many of them as prehistoric monuments, built by people whose names have long been forgotten. Yet alongside that history, another story continued to live in the imagination of the communities who called these landscapes home. One remarkable example stands in the Bonnier Valley, where the great mound of Bruna Bonnier has overlooked the surrounding countryside for more than 5,000 years. Built long before the pyramids of Egypt, it remains one of Europe's great prehistoric monuments. Over countless generations, it also became deeply woven into the traditions of the hidden people, its ancient stones carrying both history and legend together. Perhaps that is what makes these places so enduring. One person sees an extraordinary achievement of prehistoric engineering. Another sees the entrance to an unseen kingdom, standing quietly beneath the same sky. Both are looking at the very same hill, yet each carries away a different story. As evening settles over the countryside, it becomes easier to understand why these gentle mounds inspired so much wonder. Their rounded shapes seem almost too deliberate to be accidental, and in the fading light it is not difficult to imagine warm lanterns glowing somewhere beneath the earth, where laughter, music, and quiet conversation continue long after the human world has gone to sleep. The path circles slowly around the hillside instead of crossing directly over its summit. It is an old habit, one observed by generations before us, and whether it began as courtesy, caution, or simple tradition is impossible to know. Sometimes the oldest customs survive not because people remember exactly why they began, but because the landscape itself quietly teaches them to continue. If the stories are to be believed, stepping through one of those hidden doorways did not lead into darkness. Instead, travelers described emerging into a world filled with light, as though the sun and moon had been replaced by a gentle radiance that never quite faded. The air was always mild. Flowers bloomed without regard for the seasons, and every hillside seemed greener than any meadow found beneath the open sky. It was a familiar world, yet somehow more perfect. The streams ran clear enough to reflect every leaf that leaned above them. Great trees spread their branches across quiet valleys, while birds whose names have long been forgotten filled the air with songs unlike anything heard in the human world. Gentle breezes carried the fragrance of wildflowers, fresh earth, and distant wood smoke, creating a landscape that felt peaceful rather than strange. Many storytellers imagined graceful halls built beneath the ancient hills. Their walls were said to shimmer as though carved from crystal, polished stone, or precious metals that reflected the soft light around them. Others spoke of vast chambers supported by pillars so beautifully crafted that no human mason could hope to equal them. There was always music. Not loud music meant for dancing until dawn, but melodies that drifted gently through the halls like flowing water. Harps appeared often in these descriptions, their strings producing notes so beautiful that listeners found themselves forgetting every worry they had carried only moments before. Flutes, voices, and instruments whose names have long since disappeared blended together until the entire hidden world seemed to breathe in harmony. The people themselves gathered in quiet conversation, shared generous feasts, and welcomed honored guests with remarkable courtesy. Fine woven fabrics shimmered in the gentle light. Silver cups passed from hand to hand. Tables seemed endlessly supplied with fresh bread, honey, fruit, and richly prepared meals that never appeared to diminish, no matter how many joined the gathering. Again and again, the stories returned to hospitality. A weary traveler who entered with humility might be offered a comfortable seat beside the fire, warm food, and peaceful conversation. No one hurried them. No one asked difficult questions. Time itself seemed to relax, allowing every moment to unfold with quiet patience. Yet woven gently through these welcoming scenes was a note of caution. Visitors were often reminded to observe carefully before accepting every gift. Ancient storytellers repeated this advice so frequently that it became one of the best-known patterns in Celtic folklore. A single sip from an unfamiliar cup or one bite of a magnificent feast might bind a visitor more closely to the hidden world than they ever intended. Why such warnings became so common is difficult to know. Perhaps they reflected an ancient belief that every generous gift creates a lasting obligation. Perhaps they reminded listeners that every culture has customs deserving of respect. Or perhaps they simply added another layer of mystery to stories that had already captured imaginations for countless generations. Whatever the reason, the hidden world was never presented as either paradise or prison. It was simply another kingdom. Its people laughed, celebrated, welcomed guests, and lived according to traditions that had existed long before the first villages appeared upon the surrounding hills. They loved music, honored ancient customs, and moved through a landscape that seemed forever suspended between memory and dream. Standing outside beneath the quiet stars, it is easy to understand why such stories endured. A gentle hill rises from the earth with no visible doorway. Sheep graze peacefully across its slopes. The evening breeze stirs the grasses exactly as it has for centuries. Yet somewhere beneath that ordinary hillside, generations of storytellers imagined another world continuing its timeless rhythm, hidden from view, but never entirely forgotten. And if those hidden halls possessed one mystery greater than all the others, it was not their beauty, nor their music, nor even the people who lived there. It was the curious way that time itself seemed to flow whenever someone crossed the veil. Nothing within the hidden halls seemed hurried. The conversations unfolded without interruption. Musicians lingered over every melody, and laughter rose and faded with the gentle rhythm of a place that had never learned to measure its days by clocks or calendars. Surrounded by such quiet contentment, it became surprisingly easy to forget that another world waited beyond the green hill. Perhaps that was the greatest enchantment of all. The hidden people rarely spoke of time. There was no need to announce the passing of the hours when every moment felt complete in itself. One peaceful conversation became another. A meal was followed by music. Music gave way to storytelling, and before long it seemed perfectly natural to remain just a little longer. Many of the old tales begin in exactly this way. A traveler pauses to rest beneath an ancient hill. A welcoming stranger offers shelter for the evening. There is warm food, beautiful music, and pleasant company, and nothing suggests that danger is near. Eventually, the visitor thanks their generous hosts and prepares to return home, believing they have been away for only a single night. Then they step back into the human world. The familiar path is still there, winding gently across the hillside. The stream still follows its quiet course, and the same distant mountains rise against the horizon. Yet something feels strangely unfamiliar, as though the landscape itself has drawn a slow breath while no one was watching. The cottage they expected to find is gone. In its place stands another home built in a style they have never seen before. The old oak tree beside the lane has grown vast and heavy with age. Faces that should be waiting with joyful recognition are nowhere to be found, and the names they speak are answered only with puzzled expressions. A single evening has become many years, sometimes decades. In a few stories, centuries. Again and again, storytellers return to this extraordinary idea. Time beneath the hills did not flow as it did beneath the open sky. The hidden world seemed to move according to its own quiet rhythm, touching the human world without ever quite keeping pace with it. Today, we might recognize this as one of the oldest literary explorations of time itself. Long before clocks filled town squares or scientists measured the movements of distant galaxies, Celtic storytellers were imagining that two neighboring worlds might experience the passing of time in profoundly different ways. Perhaps these tales carried a deeper meaning as well. Anyone who has become completely absorbed in music, conversation, or peaceful reflection knows the curious feeling that time has quietly slipped away. Hours pass unnoticed, leaving us surprised when we finally look at the sky and discover that evening has become night. The old storytellers transformed that familiar experience into something magical, imagining a kingdom where time itself became as mysterious as the people who lived there. Whether listeners believed these stories literally mattered less than the lesson they carried. Every journey changes us. Sometimes the world changes while we are away. Sometimes we are the ones who return transformed. And sometimes, after stepping across an unseen threshold, there is simply no returning to the life we believed we had left behind. As the moon climbs higher above the ancient hill, the last notes of distant music fade once more into the night. The hidden doorway has vanished without a trace, leaving only quiet grass, scattered wildflowers, and the gentle certainty that somewhere beneath the earth, another evening has only just begun. For most people, the hidden world was never something to be conquered. It was simply accepted as another part of the landscape, existing quietly alongside farms, villages, forests, and rivers. Just as one learned which paths became muddy after heavy rain or which streams flooded in early spring, people also learned there were certain places where courtesy mattered a little more than usual. Respect became a way of living. A lone hawthorn growing in the middle of a field was often left untouched, even when it would have been easier to clear the land around it. Generations of farmers worked their fields without disturbing such trees, believing they marked places where the unseen world lay especially close. Whether the belief arose from faith, tradition, or simple caution mattered less than the custom itself, which quietly passed from one generation to the next. The same care was often shown toward ancient springs and quiet wells. Fresh water was precious, and many believed these peaceful places were watched over by unseen guardians. Visitors approached thoughtfully, taking only what they needed and leaving the place as they had found it. Some offered a silent word of thanks before continuing on their journey, while others left a small token of gratitude, believing kindness shown to the land would one day be returned. Even the oldest roads sometimes reveal this quiet respect. Travel through parts of Ireland or Scotland today, and you may notice country lanes bending unexpectedly around a solitary hill or ancient mound. There are practical reasons for many of these winding roads, yet local traditions often preserved another explanation as well. Some places, people believed, were simply better left undisturbed. It is remarkable how often these customs appear without anger or fear. The hidden people were not imagined as enemies waiting to punish every mistake. Instead, they were neighbors with their own homes, customs, and expectations. Just as a thoughtful guest behaves differently when entering another family's house. Wise travelers remembered that certain places deserved an extra measure of patience and humility. Old storytellers returned to this lesson again and again. Do not mock what you do not understand. Do not damage what has been quietly respected for generations. And never assume that because a place appears empty, no one calls it home. These simple ideas help shape daily life in countless small ways. A child might be reminded not to shout while crossing an ancient mound. A shepherd might quietly avoid sleeping beside a lonely ring of stones. Someone gathering firewood could choose another tree rather than cutting the old hawthorn standing by itself upon the hillside. None of these actions required certainty that the hidden people truly lived there. Tradition alone was often reason enough. Looking back across the centuries, these customs reveal something surprisingly gentle about the relationship between people and the unseen world. The stories did not encourage people to master nature. They encouraged people to live within it. The hills, rivers, forests, and quiet valleys were not merely scenery surrounding human lives. They were shared places, worthy of gratitude, restraint, and care, whether or not anyone could prove that unseen neighbors walked there after sunset. Perhaps that is one reason these old tales continue to speak to us today. Even in a world filled with satellites, highways, and brightly lit cities, there remains something comforting about the idea that a lonely hill deserves our respect simply because generations before us believed it did. Whether we call it folklore, tradition, or simply good stewardship, the lesson remains much the same. Walk gently. Listen more than you speak. And when the evening breeze carries unfamiliar music across the hills, There is no harm in pausing for a moment before continuing on your way. Every community has customs that visitors are expected to learn. Some are spoken aloud. Others are understood without explanation, passed quietly from one generation to the next until they become as natural as breathing. The old stories suggest that the hidden people were no different. They welcomed respect, expected courtesy, and remembered both kindness and carelessness for far longer than most human beings. Many tales begin with an ordinary traveler who unknowingly crosses one of these invisible boundaries. There is no signpost beside the path. No gate marks the entrance. The only difference is a subtle feeling that the air has grown quieter, the light a little softer, and the world somehow older than it seemed only a few steps before. Those who sensed the change often slowed their pace, speaking more softly as though entering a place that deserved quiet voices. One lesson appears again and again throughout the Celtic lands. Never assume that what belongs to the landscape belongs to you. A smooth white stone resting beside an ancient spring may seem like an ordinary keepsake. A branch fallen from a solitary hawthorn might appear to be useful firewood. A handful of flowers growing upon an old mound could brighten a table at home. Yet the old storytellers gently advised leaving such things exactly where they were found. The hidden people were believed to value the places under their care. Ancient wells, quiet groves, lonely hills, and winding streams were not simply beautiful locations. They were homes, meeting places, and pathways between worlds. To disturb them carelessly was much like walking uninvited into another family's house and rearranging the furniture before quietly leaving again. Respect, however, was often rewarded. Many stories tell of travelers who greeted an unfamiliar place with patience and humility. They paused beside a spring without muddying its waters. They admired an ancient tree without carving their initials into its bark. They crossed a hillside without damaging the wildflowers growing there. Nothing extraordinary happened in those moments. Yet the storytellers often hinted that such quiet acts of consideration never went unnoticed. Hospitality also carried responsibilities. If a stranger offered shelter, it was wise to accept graciously without demanding more than was freely given. If food appeared upon the table, it should be received with appreciation rather than greed. Every gesture carried meaning, reminding both guest and host that generosity flowed most freely where respect traveled in both directions. These stories were never really about memorizing complicated rules. They were about learning to notice. Notice the age of the trees. Notice the silence surrounding an ancient hill. Notice how gently the evening mist settles across the landscape. The more carefully someone observed the world around them, the less likely they were to act thoughtlessly within it. Perhaps this explains why so many of these traditions survived long after belief in the hidden people began to fade. Even for those who no longer expected to meet the Sidhe or the Yanshi, the custom still encouraged a thoughtful way of moving through the world. They taught people to leave beautiful places undisturbed, to treat strangers with courtesy, and to remember that not everything of value can be measured, owned, or explained. As twilight deepens, the path narrows once again beneath the branches of ancient oaks. The evening chorus of birds has grown quiet, replaced by the soft murmur of leaves overhead and the distant sound of running water somewhere beyond the trees. It is there, beside that quiet stream, that another lesson from the hidden world is waiting. Not every invitation, the old storytellers warned, should be accepted without careful thought. The stream is little more than a ribbon of silver beneath the moon, winding quietly through the trees before disappearing into the darkness beyond. Its gentle murmur fills the evening air, and for a while there seems to be nothing else to hear. Then, almost imperceptibly, another sound joins it. A harp. The melody is so delicate that it seems impossible to tell whether it is truly music or simply the breeze passing through the branches overhead. The notes rise and fall with effortless grace, never demanding attention, only inviting it. Before long, you find yourself listening more closely, wondering where such beautiful music could possibly be coming from. The old storytellers understood something about curiosity. Very few of their heroes set out hoping to find the hidden people. Most were simply following a familiar path home, tending sheep upon a hillside, or resting beside a quiet stream when something unusual caught their attention. A melody floated across the valley. A light flickered between the trees. A voice called gently from somewhere just beyond the next bend in the path. The invitation was almost always quiet. No one commanded the traveler to follow. No one blocked the road. Instead, the hidden world waited patiently, allowing curiosity to do what force never could. Many stories tell of someone stepping only a little farther than they intended, just beyond the next tree, just over the next rise. Just one more glimpse of the music, the laughter, or the dancing figures that always seemed slightly beyond reach. The distance never felt great, yet each step carried the traveler farther from the familiar world and deeper into a place where ordinary rules no longer seemed to apply. Perhaps this is why music appears so often in Celtic folklore. A beautiful melody cannot be held in your hands. It leaves no footprints and casts no shadow. It simply fills the air, drawing people toward its source with quiet persistence. Long before electric lights or paved roads, music drifting across an empty hillside at twilight would have seemed wonderfully mysterious. The hidden people rarely needed to persuade anyone. Wonder did the work for them. Curiosity has always been one of humanity's greatest gifts. It leads explorers across oceans, scholars into forgotten libraries, and children into forests filled with questions. The storytellers never suggested curiosity itself was a flaw. Rather, they reminded listeners that curiosity should walk hand in hand with wisdom. Sometimes the wisest choice was to stop, to enjoy the music exactly where you stood, to admire the lights from across the valley rather than searching for their source, to recognize that some mysteries become smaller the moment we insist upon possessing them. Yet not every traveler made that choice. Again and again, the stories speak of those who followed the melody into the mist, crossed an unseen boundary, and discovered that the world beyond the veil was every bit as beautiful as they had imagined. It was also far more complicated. Within those hidden halls awaited magnificent feasts, generous hosts, dazzling celebrations, and gifts beyond anything found in the human world. But alongside every invitation came a quiet reminder that hospitality is never entirely free. Every culture has its customs, Every kingdom its expectations, and every welcome carries responsibilities that may not be immediately understood. As the last notes of the unseen harp drift softly through the trees, the stream curves out of sight beneath a canopy of ancient branches. Somewhere ahead, warm light flickers as though shining from windows hidden beneath the earth, and the faint aroma of fresh bread and wood smoke rises gently on the evening air. Someone, it seems, is preparing a feast. The warm light grows brighter as you continue along the path, spilling softly from windows that seem carved into the hillside itself. The music has become quieter now, replaced by the gentle murmur of conversation and the occasional ripple of laughter. Whatever gathering is taking place beyond the doorway, it has already been underway for some time. There is no grand entrance, no towering gate, only a simple wooden door standing slightly open, as though its owners have been expecting guests all along. A warm glow falls across the threshold, inviting without insisting, while the comforting aroma of fresh bread, roasted apples, herbs, and honey drifts into the cool evening air. Inside, long tables stretch beneath carved wooden beams polished smooth by countless generations. Candles burn with a steady golden light, reflecting from silver cups and finely crafted bowls. Fresh loaves rest beside dishes of berries, cream, roasted vegetables, fragrant stews, and cakes decorated with flowers gathered from summer meadows. Every place at the table appears carefully prepared, as though hospitality itself has become an honored tradition. The hidden people receive their guests with quiet kindness. There is no rush to begin eating, no eager conversation competing for attention. Instead, every movement unfolds with an unhurried grace. Someone fills an empty cup before it is noticed. Another offers a warm loaf still fragrant from the oven. Musicians continue their gentle melodies from one corner of the hall, allowing the music to become part of the evening rather than its center. Again and again, the old storytellers described remarkable generosity. A weary traveler who arrived with muddy boots and tired feet was offered warmth before questions. Hunger was answered with food. Weariness was answered with rest. The hidden halls often reflected the highest ideals of hospitality that people hoped to find within their own communities. Yet beneath these welcoming scenes, another lesson quietly waited. Many stories advise travelers to accept kindness thoughtfully, paying close attention to the customs of their hosts. No one explained every rule. Instead, visitors were expected to observe, listen, and learn. The hidden world, like every society, possessed traditions that made perfect sense to those who lived there, even when they seemed mysterious to outsiders. Food carried a special place in these stories. Across many cultures, sharing a meal creates a bond between strangers. Bread broken together becomes friendship. A shared table becomes common ground. Celtic storytellers understood this deeply, weaving that ancient understanding into tales where meals were never merely about satisfying hunger. They marked the beginning of a relationship, carrying both generosity and responsibility. Perhaps this is why the fairy feast appears so often throughout the old legends. It is beautiful. It is comforting. It is exactly the sort of place where any weary traveler would hope to spend an evening before continuing home at first light. The storytellers understood that temptation rarely arrives wearing a frightening face. More often, it appears as everything we have quietly wished to find. Even so, the hidden halls were never portrayed as places of deception alone. Many guests entered, shared an evening of music and conversation, and departed with nothing more mysterious than a wonderful memory. Others left carrying a deeper appreciation for beauty, generosity, and the quiet dignity with which the hidden people welcomed those who entered respectfully. Perhaps that balance is what has allowed these stories to endure. The hidden world was neither wholly dangerous nor perfectly safe. It was simply another place, shaped by its own customs, where wisdom mattered just as much as wonder. Those who remembered that truth often returned home with remarkable stories. Those who forgot it sometimes found themselves learning lessons they never expected. As the candles burn lower and the musicians play one final melody for the evening, conversation gradually fades into a peaceful silence. Outside, the moon continues its slow journey across the night sky, while somewhere beyond the warm glow of the hidden hall, another ancient path waits patiently beneath the stars. As the evening draws peacefully onward, you begin to notice something unusual about the conversations taking place around the table. No one speaks hurriedly. No one interrupts. Every story is allowed to unfold at its own gentle pace, while every question is answered with thoughtful care. It is as though words themselves possess value. Among the hidden people, a promise is never treated as a casual remark or a passing thought. Once spoken aloud, it becomes something almost tangible, as though it has taken its place beside the ancient stones, the flowing rivers, and the quiet hills that have witnessed countless generations come and go. This belief was not unique to the hidden world. Throughout the Celtic lands, spoken promises carried enormous importance. Long before written contracts became common, a person's word often served as the strongest bond they could offer. Agreements were remembered, witnessed, and passed from memory to memory with remarkable care. To give one's word was to place a measure of one's honor into another person's keeping. Perhaps that is why the old storytellers imagined the hidden people speaking with such deliberate thought. They did not waste words. Neither did they scatter compliments or promises without purpose. Every invitation meant exactly what it said. Every agreement carried responsibilities for both those who offered it and those who accepted. Listening quietly beside the fire, you begin to understand why the conversations feel so different from those of the human world. No one struggles to be the loudest voice. No one speaks simply to fill the silence. The pauses themselves seem meaningful, allowing each thought to settle gently before another begins. Outside, the wind moves softly through the trees, almost as though the forest itself is listening. Hospitality followed much the same pattern. A welcome offered sincerely deserves sincere gratitude in return. Kindness was expected to be answered with kindness, generosity with generosity, respect with respect. These quiet exchanges formed invisible threads that held communities together, whether those communities belonged to villages of ordinary people or to the hidden halls beneath the hills. Many of the old legends quietly suggest that the hidden people admired honesty more than cleverness. A traveler who admitted being tired might receive a comfortable place beside the fire. Someone who confessed they had become lost could be shown the road home before sunrise. Yet those who boasted, exaggerated, or attempted to deceive often discovered that the hidden world possessed little patience for vanity. It is a remarkably timeless lesson. Civilizations rise and fall. Languages change. Kingdoms disappear into history. Yet trust remains one of the quiet foundations upon which every lasting community is built. The storytellers understood this long before philosophers began writing books about ethics or governments recorded laws upon parchment. Perhaps this explains why the hidden people rarely appear as creatures of simple magic. Again and again, they behave as members of an ancient society with customs that have been refined over countless generations. Their music has traditions. Their feasts have rituals. Their greetings follow familiar patterns, and their promises are remembered long after they have been spoken. As the final cups are quietly gathered from the table, the musicians begin placing their instruments carefully into carved wooden cases. One by one, candles are gently extinguished until only the soft glow of the hearth remains, casting long shadows across the stone floor. The evening has grown wonderfully peaceful. Yet somewhere beyond these warm halls, beneath the quiet moon and among the ancient hills, there are still customs we have not yet discovered. Some concern the gifts that may be accepted. Others concern the names we choose to speak aloud. And both, according to the old storytellers, deserve far more care than they first appear to require. The fire burns lower now, its warm light dancing gently across the stone walls of the great hall. Conversation has become quieter, settling into comfortable silence, as though no one feels the need to fill every passing moment with words. In such peaceful company, it becomes easier to notice what is not being said. No one has asked your name. No one has offered theirs. The introductions that seem so ordinary in the human world simply never take place, and yet no one appears uncomfortable with the quiet mystery. It is enough to share the evening without knowing every detail about the person seated beside you. The old storytellers understood that names possess a curious kind of power. To know the true name of a place is to remember its history. To know the true name of a river is to recall the generations who depended upon its waters. To speak the name of an ancestor is to invite their memory into the present. Names were never regarded as ordinary labels. They carried identity, history, belonging, and sometimes responsibility. Perhaps this is why so many tales surrounding the hidden people treat names with quiet care. In some stories, travelers wisely avoid asking unnecessary questions, allowing conversations to unfold naturally without pressing for answers. In others, the hidden people themselves remain unnamed, content to be remembered simply as the She, the Du Yanshi, or the Talwith Teg, broad family names that reveal something about their nature while preserving the mystery of the individuals themselves. There is something surprisingly respectful about this. We often feel an urge to explain everything we encounter, to place names upon unfamiliar things until they become comfortably understood. Yet the older traditions sometimes suggest another path. Rather than hurrying to define every mystery, they invite us to live beside it for a while, allowing wonder to remain intact. The landscape itself reflects this quiet habit. Across the Celtic world, hills, springs, forests, and valleys often carry names whose meanings reach back hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. Many describe physical features that remain visible today. Others preserve fragments of forgotten languages or stories whose endings have long since slipped beyond memory. Every name becomes a small doorway into the past, reminding us that generations have stood upon the same ground, looking at the same hills beneath the same moon. Perhaps that explains why the hidden people seem so closely connected to the places they inhabit. They are not wandering strangers passing briefly through the landscape. They belong to it. The hills remember them. The rivers know their songs. Ancient trees stretch their branches above paths that have echoed with their footsteps for longer than anyone can count. As listeners, we are invited into that relationship as well. Rather than rushing from one legend to another, we begin learning the character of each place. One hill becomes known for music, another for quiet gatherings beneath the stars. A particular spring becomes associated with kindness, while an old hawthorn marks a place where respectful travelers instinctively lower their voices. Gradually, the landscape itself begins to feel like an old friend. Perhaps that is the greatest gift these stories offer. They teach us that every place has its own identity. Every path carries memories. Every ancient stone has witnessed lives we can scarcely imagine. When we slow our steps enough to notice these quiet details, the ordinary world begins to feel richer, older, and wonderfully alive. The fire has settled into glowing embers now, and outside the hidden hall the moon hangs high above the ancient hills. Somewhere in the distance an owl calls softly through the night, while a cool breeze stirs the grasses that cover the hillside overhead. Before long, we will leave the warmth of these hidden halls and return to the moonlit paths above. There, among the forests and lonely valleys, we will discover that not every meeting with the hidden people begins with music, laughter, or a welcoming fire. Some begin with nothing more than the sound of footsteps where no one can be seen. The forest grows a little quieter as we continue along the winding path. Towering oaks and graceful birches arch overhead, their branches forming a gentle canopy that filters the moonlight into soft ribbons upon the woodland floor. The scent of moss and pine fills the cool evening air, while somewhere in the distance a small owl calls into the stillness. Every step seems to carry us farther from the ordinary world and deeper into a landscape where ancient stories have always felt at home. The old storytellers often spoke of unexpected encounters taking place in places very much like this. A traveler walking alone through the woods might notice movement just beyond the next stand of trees. At first it seemed no more than a passing shadow or the brief flutter of leaves stirred by the breeze. Yet when the eye returned for another look, there stood a graceful figure watching quietly from among the trunks before disappearing as gently as morning mist. These glimpses were almost always brief. The hidden people were not believed to linger in open view or announce their presence with dramatic displays. Instead, they appeared only for a passing moment, leaving behind a memory that was both vivid and strangely uncertain. Many people later found themselves wondering whether they had truly seen another living being or whether the forest itself had woven together light, shadow, and imagination into something that felt wonderfully real. Across Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, remarkably similar stories have been preserved for centuries. A shepherd crossing a familiar hillside, notices someone standing beside an ancient tree. A woman gathering herbs catches sight of flowing garments between the branches. A hunter pauses after hearing laughter carried upon the wind, only to discover that the woodland has become perfectly still once again. Although the details differ from one region to another, the quiet feeling of the encounter remains remarkably consistent. What makes these stories so memorable is their gentle restraint. The hidden people are seldom described in great detail because the meeting itself is over almost as soon as it begins. The listener is left with only a few impressions: a graceful silhouette, unusual clothing, a calm expression, or eyes that seem to reflect the light in an unfamiliar way. The mystery is never completely resolved, and that uncertainty has become one of the most enduring qualities of Celtic fairy folklore. It is also worth remembering that forests naturally encourage this way of seeing. Moonlight shifts across the branches, mist drifts quietly between the trees, and familiar shapes change as the light changes around them. Our eyes are constantly adjusting to movement, shadow, and distance, creating moments when imagination and observation seem to walk side by side. The storytellers understood this well, choosing the woodland as the perfect place for the boundary between the ordinary world and the hidden one to feel wonderfully thin. Whether these fleeting encounters were understood as true meetings with the hidden people, or simply as moments that awakened the imagination, was left to each listener to decide. The stories never insist upon a single explanation. Instead, they invite us to walk a little more slowly, to notice the beauty that surrounds us, and to remain open to the possibility that every ancient forest still holds a few quiet mysteries beneath its sheltering branches. As the path leads us deeper beneath the moonlit canopy, the trees begin to thin, revealing a gentle rise ahead where the earth itself seems strangely shaped by time. Long before these woods grew tall, people believed the hills beyond held some of the oldest and most closely guarded secrets of the hidden world. As the quiet laughter fades among the trees, the forest seems perfectly ordinary once again. Sunlight dances across the moss, birds continue their morning songs, and a squirrel pauses upon the trunk of an old pine before disappearing higher into the branches. Whatever unseen presence may have shared the path only moments ago has slipped gently beyond sight. Perhaps that is why so many people imagine the hidden world as a kingdom rather than a collection of wandering spirits. A kingdom suggests order. It suggests families, traditions, celebrations, responsibilities, and generations living together beneath the same sky. Just as every village has its farmers, musicians, teachers, and storytellers, the hidden world was often imagined as a complete society with its own customs quietly unfolding beyond human view. The old tales speak of great halls where music was treasured, not simply as entertainment, but as part of everyday life. Skilled musicians filled the evenings with melodies remembered across generations, while gifted storytellers preserved the history of their people through tales carried from one gathering to the next. Nothing was hurried. Knowledge passed naturally from elder to child, just as rivers carry fresh water from the mountains to the sea. There were craftsmen as well. Some legends describe remarkable smiths whose metalwork shimmered like moonlight upon still water. Others remembered weavers whose fabrics seemed to capture the changing colors of dawn and twilight, or woodworkers who shaped living branches into graceful furniture that appeared to grow rather than being built. The Hidden Kingdom was also said to have its own gardens. Fruit trees bloomed in every season. Bees wandered peacefully among flowers whose fragrance never faded. Quiet pathways curved beside streams so clear that every smooth stone resting upon the bottom could be counted without effort. Whether these descriptions reflected imagination or memory mattered less than the feeling they created. The hidden world was never portrayed as barren or lonely. It was filled with quiet abundance. Many storytellers also imagined places devoted simply to learning. Around warm fires or beneath ancient trees, older members of the hidden community shared stories with the young. The lessons were not only about history, but about the changing seasons, the movements of birds, the flowering of plants, and the countless rhythms that quietly shaped the natural world. Wisdom in these stories grew from careful observation rather than hurried conclusions. Even celebrations carried a gentle dignity. Music drifted through the halls. Dancers moved with effortless grace. Friends greeted one another with warmth that needed no grand display. These gatherings were remembered not for noise or excitement, but for harmony. Everything seemed to belong exactly where it was meant to be. Perhaps this is one reason the hidden people remained so fascinating throughout the centuries. They were not imagined as perfect beings. They laughed. They celebrated. They worked. They remembered. In many ways, they reflected humanity itself, while also representing the hope that another society might exist where beauty, patience, craftsmanship, and courtesy had never been forgotten. That idea must have brought comfort to many listeners gathered around winter fires. Beyond the hardships of daily life, beyond uncertain harvests, long winters, and changing kingdoms, there might exist another community where the oldest songs were still being sung and the oldest traditions still quietly honored. Whether such a place existed mattered less than what it encouraged people to imagine. A peaceful society living in harmony with the hills. A kingdom where beauty was carefully preserved. A world where music, storytelling, and kindness were considered treasures worthy of passing from one generation to the next. As the woodland path begins descending toward a broad green valley, the wind carries with it the faint scent of heather and distant rain. Somewhere beyond the next hill, another ancient story is waiting, one that reminds us the hidden people were not only guardians of beautiful places, but faithful keepers of the oldest memories the land itself could remember. As the valley opens before us, the morning sun begins lifting the last ribbons of mist from the fields below. Stone walls wind gently across the hillsides, following paths that have guided shepherds and travelers for countless generations. Here and there, ancient standing stones rise quietly from the earth, their weathered faces watching another sunrise, just as they have for centuries beyond counting. Places like these invited stories. No one remembered who first placed the great stones upon the hills. Their builders had long since become part of history, leaving only the monuments themselves to stand against the passing years. By the time many of the old legends were being told, these ancient places already seemed impossibly old, as though they had always belonged to the landscape. It was only natural that the hidden people became part of those memories. The Shi were often imagined as faithful guardians of places whose origins had faded beyond human recollection. Ancient hills, forgotten pathways, weathered circles of stone, and quiet springs all seem to belong to a deeper layer of the world, one that existed long before living memory could reach. If no one could remember who first walked these places, perhaps the hidden people still did. The stories often suggest that the hidden world possessed a memory far older than our own. Imagine sitting beside a quiet stream while someone begins telling a story that started 1,000 years before your grandparents were born. For the hidden people, the passing of centuries was not something found in dusty books or fading manuscripts. It was something remembered through living experience, one generation quietly sharing its memories with the next. A great oak might be remembered as a sapling. A broad meadow might still be known by the forest that once covered it. A winding river might carry stories of travelers whose names have disappeared from every human record, yet remain quietly alive within the hidden world. Perhaps this is why ancient places feel different to so many people. Whether standing beside a weathered stone circle or walking through the peaceful silence of an old woodland, there is often a sense that countless lives have unfolded there before our own. The hidden people became one way of expressing that feeling, giving gentle voices to landscapes that seem filled with memories too deep to be explained by history alone. The old storytellers understood something that modern life sometimes encourages us to forget. A place is more than its location. It is every story ever told there, every child who wandered its paths, every traveler who paused to rest beneath its trees, every song carried across its hills by the evening wind. The hidden people became faithful keepers of those memories, preserving them as carefully as a librarian tends a treasured collection of ancient books. Perhaps that is why they were so often associated with wisdom rather than power. Knowledge gathered patiently over centuries carries its own quiet strength. Someone who has watched kingdoms rise and disappear has little need to hurry. Someone who remembers the first tree growing upon a hillside is unlikely to be troubled by the passing concerns of a single season. As we continue our walk through these ancient landscapes, it becomes easier to understand why the hidden people rarely seem surprised by anything. They have watched generations come and go. They have seen children become grandparents. They have listened as one language slowly gave way to another, while the rivers continued flowing exactly as they always had. The land changed. The people changed. Yet the oldest hills remained, carrying their stories forward beneath every sunrise and every moonlit night. Ahead, the path begins climbing once again toward a solitary ridge where a circle of standing stones waits quietly against the sky. For countless generations, people have wondered why such places were built, who gathered there, and what ceremonies once unfolded beneath the stars. The hidden people, the storytellers quietly suggested, might already know the answer. The climb is gentle, and before long the path reaches the broad ridge where the ancient stones have been waiting through another quiet morning. Lichen softens their weathered surfaces, while small patches of moss have settled into every crack and hollow left by countless winters. They stand without haste, just as they have through storms, sunshine, and centuries of changing seasons. No one who first told these stories remembered who raised them. Even the oldest storytellers inherited the stones from generations that had come before. Their builders had vanished into the distant past, leaving no written explanation behind. The great pillars remained, silent and patient, inviting each new generation to wonder why they had been placed upon the hill with such remarkable care. Some circles face the rising sun. Others greet the setting moon. A few seem to follow the turning of the seasons with astonishing precision, quietly marking the arrival of spring, the height of summer, the fading days of autumn, and the long nights of winter. Long before written calendars became common, these ancient monuments helped people understand the steady rhythm of the heavens. It is easy to imagine why places like these gathered stories. When the moon rises between two weathered stones on an autumn evening, or the first light of dawn reaches the center of a circle after the longest night of the year, the experience feels quietly remarkable. Even today, many visitors speak of an unusual stillness surrounding these places, as though time itself moves a little more gently upon the hill. The old storytellers often imagined the hidden people visiting such places long after everyone else had gone home. When twilight settled across the countryside and the last shepherd disappeared over the distant ridge, the standing stones became places of quiet gathering. Gentle music drifted upon the evening air. Soft laughter echoed between the ancient pillars. Moonlight painted long silver shadows across the grass while graceful figures moved among the stones with an ease that suggested they had known the place for far longer than human memory could reach. No one claimed these gatherings happened every night. That would have made them ordinary. Instead, they belonged to those rare evenings when the world itself seemed unusually peaceful. When the wind fell silent, the stars appeared brighter than expected, and the boundary between the familiar and the mysterious seemed almost impossibly thin. Perhaps that idea reveals something important about the old legends. The hidden people did not create sacred places. Rather, they were drawn to places that already inspired wonder. Ancient hills, quiet springs, lonely forests, weathered stone circles. These landscapes carried a sense of age that encouraged reflection long before anyone connected them with the hidden world. The stories simply gave those feelings a voice. Standing among the ancient stones, it becomes almost impossible not to think about the countless people who have stood here before us. Children whose names have been forgotten, travelers who paused to rest before continuing their journey, elders who watched the sunrise from this very hill, wondering whether their grandchildren would one day stand where they stood. The stones have witnessed them all. Season after season, generation after generation, without speaking a single word. Perhaps that quiet endurance explains why they became such powerful symbols throughout Celtic folklore. The hidden people were imagined as beings who remembered what humanity had forgotten, and nowhere did memory seem to linger more peacefully than among these weathered monuments, where earth, sky, sunlight, and moonlight had continued their timeless conversation for thousands of years. As we leave the ridge behind, the path begins descending toward a quiet valley where water glimmers between clusters of alder and willow. From somewhere ahead comes the gentle sound of a spring emerging from the hillside, its clear waters beginning another journey toward the sea. Like the ancient stones, the old wells also possess stories of their own. The path descends gently into the valley, where the air grows cooler with every step. Tall alders lean over a narrow stream, their reflections trembling softly upon the water, while patches of moss cover the stones with thick carpets of green. Before long, The murmur of flowing water becomes clearer until you arrive at a spring emerging quietly from beneath a weathered shelf of rock. There is nothing grand about the place. No towering monument marks its location. No carved doorway announces its importance. The water simply rises from the earth as it has done for centuries, gathering in a clear pool before beginning its patient journey downhill. It is a place that could easily be passed without a second glance, yet the old storytellers rarely hurried beyond such springs. Water has always inspired wonder. Long before wells were lined with stone or rivers crossed by bridges, people depended upon clear springs for life itself. A dependable source of fresh water meant that families could settle nearby, fields could flourish, and travelers might safely continue their journeys. It is little surprise that places providing such quiet generosity became surrounded by gratitude, reverence, and eventually by story. Across the Celtic lands, many springs were remembered as places where the hidden world seemed especially close. Some were associated with healing. Others became places of quiet reflection where people paused before beginning a long journey or gave thanks after returning safely home. A few were believed to be watched over by unseen guardians who valued courtesy every bit as much as the fresh water rising from the earth itself. Visitors often approached these places thoughtfully, rather than arriving with loud voices or hurried footsteps. They slowed their pace almost instinctively. Some rested for a few peaceful moments beside the water before continuing onward. Others left a small offering of gratitude, a simple gesture acknowledging that every gift from the land deserves appreciation. Whether those offerings reflected religious devotion, local tradition, or simple thankfulness varied from place to place, yet the quiet habit remained remarkably widespread. Perhaps that gentle custom reveals something important. The spring asked for nothing. It simply continued flowing, day after day, year after year, generation after generation. The hidden people were often imagined in much the same way. They were not constantly demanding attention from the human world. Instead, they remained quietly woven into the landscape, becoming visible only to those willing to slow their steps and truly notice the places around them. Listen for a moment to the sound of the water. There is no beginning to its song and no obvious ending. Each drop joins another before slipping away toward distant rivers and, eventually, the sea. The melody changes from moment to moment, yet somehow it remains the same. It is easy to understand why storytellers imagine springs as places where memories gathered, where centuries flowed together as naturally as the water itself. Many old wells eventually became places of pilgrimage. Some were associated with saints after Christianity spread across the Celtic world. Others retained customs that were almost certainly far older, quietly blending ancient traditions with newer beliefs. History and folklore flowed together here just as naturally as fresh water joined the stream below, each adding another layer to the story of the place. The hidden people were never far from these traditions. Some legends speak of graceful figures glimpsed beside the water at dawn, their reflections lingering upon the surface even after they themselves had disappeared into the morning mist. Others tell of soft singing heard where no singer could be found, or gentle laughter carried across the pool before fading with the breeze. Like so many encounters with the hidden world, These moments were brief enough to remain uncertain and beautiful enough to be remembered for a lifetime. As we leave the spring behind, the stream continues its quiet journey through the valley, winding toward forests that grow deeper with every passing mile. There, where sunlight reaches the ground only in scattered patches and ancient roots twist beneath the moss, another kind of threshold awaits, one where the hidden people were said to walk most freely beneath the shelter of the trees. The stream wanders ahead of us, weaving its way between moss-covered stones before disappearing beneath a graceful arch of branches. As we follow its course, the valley slowly gives way to woodland, and the sunlight grows softer, filtered through layers of oak, ash, and hazel until it reaches the forest floor in quiet patches of gold. The air changes as well. It carries the rich scent of damp leaves, fern, and earth that has rested undisturbed through countless seasons. Every sound seems gentler beneath the trees, as though the forest itself encourages calm voices and unhurried footsteps. For the people of the Celtic lands, forests were far more than collections of trees. They were living communities where every towering oak had survived storms no one still remembered. Every fallen trunk became a home for mosses and tiny woodland creatures, and young saplings quietly continued a cycle that had unfolded for thousands of years. To walk through such a place was to enter a landscape that seemed to keep its own measure of time. The pace of the outside world faded behind you, replaced by rhythms shaped by bird song, flowing water, and the slow growth of ancient trees. Perhaps that is why so many stories place the hidden people beneath the shelter of the woodland canopy. The forest concealed without truly hiding, allowing light and shadow to mingle until the ordinary and the mysterious seemed almost impossible to separate. A graceful figure standing between two great oaks might be visible for only a heartbeat before blending once again into shifting sunlight. A movement at the edge of the path could disappear as naturally as a deer stepping behind a curtain of hazel, leaving only the quiet certainty that the forest still held many things beyond immediate understanding. The old storytellers often imagined that the hidden people preferred places where nature had been allowed to follow its own quiet wisdom. Ancient groves, fern-covered clearings, and peaceful hollows where sunlight lingered for only a few moments each afternoon seemed perfectly suited to neighbors who valued patience more than possession. There is a special kind of silence found only in an old forest. It is not an empty silence, but one filled with countless gentle sounds that reveal themselves only to those willing to listen carefully. Leaves whisper high above. A distant woodpecker taps patiently against weathered bark. Branches sway together in the breeze, and somewhere beyond sight a small animal makes its careful way through the undergrowth. Among so many familiar sounds, it became easy to understand why people occasionally believed they had heard something more. A faint footstep, a soft laugh carried by the wind, or the briefest glimpse of movement between the trees could linger in memory long after the walk itself had ended. The old tales rarely hurried to explain such moments, allowing the quiet mystery to remain part of the landscape itself. Some forests became known for a single remarkable tree that drew visitors across generations. A great oak with branches stretching like welcoming arms, an ancient yew standing watch beside a peaceful churchyard, or a graceful ash growing near a clear spring slowly gathered stories as surely as they gathered birds and morning mist. These trees became living landmarks. Children played beneath their branches, Travelers paused there to rest, and elders returned year after year until the tree itself seemed to carry the memories of everyone who had sought its shade. The hidden people were often imagined nearby, not because the trees belonged to them, but because both shared the same quiet qualities. They represented patience, endurance, and the gentle wisdom that comes from remaining rooted while the world changes all around. As we continue deeper into the woodland, the path narrows until soft moss covers nearly every stone beneath our feet. The stream slips quietly out of sight, though its gentle voice still echoes somewhere beyond the trees, and ahead the forest opens into a small clearing where the grass grows in a remarkably perfect circle beneath a ring of ancient oaks. It is here, in places that seem almost ordinary until one looks a little more closely, that another of the oldest traditions of the hidden world quietly begins. The clearing opens almost without notice. One moment the path is sheltered beneath towering branches, and the next the trees step back, allowing warm sunlight to spill across a broad circle of grass. Wildflowers sway gently in the breeze. Butterflies drift from blossom to blossom, and the forest seems to pause for a quiet breath before continuing on its way. There is nothing hurried about this place. The grasses grow a little taller here. The air feels unexpectedly still, and the surrounding oaks seem to form a natural gathering place that has welcomed visitors for longer than anyone could remember. It is easy to understand why travelers might stop for a few peaceful moments before continuing their journey. Throughout the Celtic lands, circles held a special place in both daily life and imagination. The turning of the seasons followed a circle, returning each spring to begin another year. The moon completed its familiar journey through changing phases before becoming full once again. Even communities gathered in circles to share stories, celebrate festivals, and welcome new generations into traditions that stretched back through countless lifetimes. Nature seemed to favor the same gentle pattern. Ripples spread across the surface of a quiet pond in widening circles after a single leaf touched the water. Birds built rounded nests that sheltered new life each spring. Trees added another ring within their trunks every year, quietly recording the passing of time beneath their bark. The shape appeared so often that it seemed woven into the very fabric of the living world. Perhaps that is one reason circles came to symbolize completeness. They have no beginning that can be separated from their ending. Every point leads naturally to the next, inviting the eye to continue its journey without interruption. For people who watched the heavens, tended the land, and measured life by the changing seasons, the circle became a quiet reminder that endings often prepare the way for new beginnings. The hidden people were often imagined gathering in places where this gentle sense of completeness could be felt most clearly. A ring of ancient trees, a naturally rounded meadow, or a clearing where the grasses seemed to grow in graceful harmony all suggested a landscape that possessed its own quiet balance. Such places invited respect rather than ownership, encouraging visitors to pause and observe instead of rushing through. Many storytellers believed that certain clearings carried an atmosphere unlike the woodland surrounding them. The birds continued to sing, the breeze continued to move through the leaves, and sunlight still danced upon the grass. Yet the place itself seemed touched by an unusual stillness. Nothing dramatic announced its presence. The difference was subtle enough that two travelers might walk the same path, with only one sensing that the clearing possessed a character all its own. Whether that feeling arose from the landscape itself or from the stories passed down through generations is impossible to say with certainty. Yet the traditions remain remarkably consistent across Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and the Isle of Man. Some places invited a little more care than others, not because they were feared, but because they were regarded as neighbors deserving courtesy and quiet respect. Standing in such a clearing, it becomes easy to appreciate how closely observation and imagination often work together. A peaceful place encouraged reflection, reflection inspired stories, and those stories, in turn, encourage future generations to notice details they might otherwise have overlooked. In this way, the landscape and the storyteller became gentle companions, each enriching the other through the passing centuries. As we continue across the clearing, our footsteps remain light upon the grass. Near its center, where the morning dew still lingers despite the growing warmth of the sun, another circle begins to reveal itself. It is smaller than the clearing that surrounds it, marked not by stone or timber, but by something that appears and disappears with the changing seasons, quietly inspiring one of the most enduring traditions of the hidden world. As we walk toward the center of the clearing, another circle slowly comes into view. At first it is easy to overlook, for it is formed not of stone or timber, but of small mushrooms rising quietly through the grass. Their pale caps create an almost perfect ring, delicate enough to seem accidental, and yet so carefully arranged that they immediately invite a second look. Such circles have appeared in fields and forests for as long as people have watched the changing seasons. After periods of warm rain, they may emerge almost overnight, tracing graceful patterns across a meadow before fading away again within a matter of days. Some are no larger than a dining table, while others spread many yards across the landscape, growing a little wider with each passing year as the hidden threads beneath the soil continue their patient work. Today, we understand that these remarkable circles are created by fungi. Hidden beneath the surface, fine white strands known as mycelium slowly expand outward through the earth. As they grow, mushrooms appear around the outer edge of the network, creating the graceful rings that have fascinated observers for centuries. Modern science has revealed the process, but it has done little to lessen the quiet beauty of the site itself. Long before anyone understood the hidden life beneath the soil, people sought another explanation. Across Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and the Isle of Man, many believe these circles mark places where the hidden people had gathered to celebrate beneath the stars. During the quiet hours of the night, music was said to drift across the meadow while graceful dancers moved hand in hand, leaving behind only the delicate ring of mushrooms as the first light of morning touched the fields. It is a wonderfully gentle image. Nothing in these stories suggests destruction or conflict. Instead, they imagine a celebration so graceful that the earth itself quietly remembered where it had taken place. By sunrise, the dancers had vanished, yet the circle remained as a small reminder that not every gathering belonged to the visible world. Over time, these stories encouraged people to treat such places with particular respect. A traveler crossing a meadow might simply choose to walk around the ring rather than through its center. Children were gently reminded to admire the mushrooms without disturbing them, and farmers sometimes left the circles untouched if it could be done without hardship. Whether these customs arose from belief, courtesy, or simple affection for old traditions mattered less than the habit itself. Respect became part of the landscape. There is something deeply human about such customs. When a place gathers stories over many generations, those stories often shape behavior just as surely as fences or pathways do. A quiet circle of mushrooms became more than an interesting feature of the woodland floor. It became a reminder that the world still contained places where humility was the wisest companion. Even now, fairy rings continue to appear in gardens, parks, and forests throughout the Celtic lands and far beyond. Most people smile when they discover one, appreciating both the remarkable work of nature and the centuries of folklore that have grown around these quiet circles. Science explains how they form, while tradition reminds us why they continue to capture our imagination. Perhaps the two ways of seeing the world are not so far apart after all. One tells us how the mushrooms grow. The other reminds us that beauty has always inspired stories. Together, they invite us to look a little more closely at the ground beneath our feet and to notice the extraordinary patterns that quietly unfold in places we might otherwise pass without a second glance. As the clearing gives way once more to the shelter of the trees, the afternoon light begins to soften. Long shadows stretch across the woodland floor, and the steady rhythm of the forest seems to change almost imperceptibly as the day slowly prepares to yield to evening. For the old storytellers, that gentle change in the light mattered very much indeed. It was often at the turning of the day, when neither full daylight nor true darkness held the land, that the boundary between worlds was believed to grow its thinnest. As we leave the woodland clearing behind, the afternoon slowly begins its quiet transformation. The bright light that danced across the leaves only a short while ago softens into warmer shades of gold, while long shadows stretch gently across the forest floor. The air grows cooler, and the birds that welcome the morning gradually give way to those whose songs belong to the coming night. Nothing changes all at once. The world simply drifts from one moment into the next with such gentle patience that it is difficult to say precisely when afternoon becomes evening. The old storytellers notice these quiet transitions, finding meaning not only in the destinations, but in the moments that join them together. Throughout the Celtic world, the times between one part of the day and another were often regarded as especially meaningful. Dawn welcomed the first light without yet becoming full morning. Dusk carried the warmth of daylight while gently inviting the first stars to appear. These were moments that belonged completely to neither state, and it was this sense of gentle in-betweenness that inspired so many stories. The hidden people were frequently associated with these peaceful transitions. They were not imagined appearing beneath the brightest light of midday, when every detail stood plainly before the eye, nor were they always connected with the deepest hours of darkness. Instead, many traditions place their quiet presence at those times when the world itself seemed to pause before becoming something new. It is not difficult to understand why. As daylight softens, familiar landscapes begin to change their appearance. A distant hill loses its sharp outline. The branches of an ancient oak blend into one graceful silhouette. Mist gathers over streams and meadows, softening the edges between earth and sky until the countryside seems touched by quiet mystery. The senses become more attentive as well. Sounds travel differently through the cooling air. The fragrance of pine, damp earth, and flowering heather seems a little richer than it did beneath the warmth of the afternoon sun. Even familiar paths invite slower footsteps, as the changing light encourages the eye to linger upon details that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. The old stories often reflect this careful way of observing the world. Rather than describing sudden miracles or startling encounters, they speak of gentle moments when someone noticed that the evening felt unusually still, or that music seemed to drift across a valley just before the last glow of sunset disappeared beyond the hills. These were not dramatic interruptions of ordinary life. They were quiet invitations to pay closer attention. Perhaps that is one reason these traditions have endured for so many generations. Nearly everyone has experienced the peaceful feeling that arrives as the day settles toward evening. Work begins to fade into memory. The pace of life becomes a little slower, and the landscape itself seems to exhale after the brightness of the day. The storytellers simply suggested that such moments invited more than reflection. They invited awareness. Dawn carried a similar sense of quiet possibility. Before the world had fully awakened, the countryside rested in a delicate balance between darkness and light. Dew shimmered upon the grasses. Birds offered the first tentative notes of their morning songs, and the rising sun slowly revealed hills and forests that had been hidden only moments before. It was another threshold, another peaceful meeting place between what had been and what was about to begin. These daily transitions gently reminded people that change need not arrive with great noise or sudden force. Some of life's most meaningful moments unfold almost unnoticed, carrying us from one season of experience into another with the same quiet grace that guides the sun across the sky each day. As evening continues its gentle descent, the first stars begin to appear above the treetops, one by one, until the heavens once again become filled with quiet light. The turning of a single day has always inspired wonder, but for the Celtic storytellers, it also pointed toward something even greater. Just as every day moved from light to darkness and back again, the entire year followed its own great circle, marked by seasons that carried their own ancient thresholds, each one inviting the hidden world a little closer to our own. As darkness settles gently across the woodland, the stars continue appearing one by one until the sky is filled with quiet points of light. The forest grows wonderfully still, and somewhere in the distance an owl begins its evening call, echoing softly across the hills. It is another reminder that every ending quietly prepares the way for another beginning. The people of the Celtic lands watched these rhythms with remarkable care. Long before clocks measured the passing hours and calendars hung upon household walls, life was guided by the steady turning of the natural world. The first blossoms of spring, the lengthening days of summer, the ripening fields of autumn, and the peaceful stillness of winter all carried practical meaning for farming, travel, and daily life. Yet they also carried something deeper, a quiet awareness that the earth itself was always moving through a great and beautiful cycle. Nothing remained unchanged. The bare branches of winter slowly welcomed fresh green leaves. Meadows filled with wildflowers before giving way to golden grasses. Birds arrived with the warmth of spring and departed again as colder winds returned from the north. Even the oldest oak, standing firmly upon the hillside, revealed the passing years through the gentle rhythm of budding, flourishing, and resting once more. To those who live close to the land, these changes were never simply observations. They were reminders that every season possessed its own gifts, its own responsibilities, and its own quiet beauty. Each part of the year belonged to the whole, just as every note belongs within a melody. None stood alone, and none could be understood without the others. The hidden people were often imagined moving through these same rhythms. In the freshness of spring, they seemed to accompany the awakening earth as flowers opened beneath the warming sun. During the long evenings of summer, stories placed them dancing beneath moonlit skies or gathering in peaceful glades hidden among the trees. As autumn arrived, the landscape itself seemed to grow quieter, preparing for the restful months ahead, while winter invited reflection beside warm fires as old tales were shared from one generation to the next. These images do not describe a calendar so much as a way of seeing the world. The passing of the year was not something to be conquered or hurried through. It was something to join, much as a traveler joins the gentle current of a river rather than attempting to change its course. Life felt richer when lived in harmony with the seasons instead of in opposition to them. Perhaps this explains why the Celtic year was remembered through a handful of especially meaningful moments. Rather than marking every small change, tradition paused at those times when one season seemed to give itself gracefully to another. These were natural thresholds, moments when the countryside itself appeared to take a quiet breath before continuing its endless journey around the circle of the year. The storytellers often spoke of these turning points with particular affection. Fields looked different. The quality of the light changed. Morning air carried unfamiliar scents. Birdsong shifted almost without notice. Even the wind seemed to arrive from another part of the world, bringing subtle reminders that the landscape was preparing for what came next. It is easy to understand why such moments encouraged reflection. Standing upon a hillside while the first cool breeze of autumn moves across the heather, or watching the earliest blossoms appear after a long winter, one cannot help but feel that the world is quietly becoming something new. These are gentle transformations, unfolding so patiently that they often reveal themselves only when we pause long enough to notice. The old traditions taught that these seasonal thresholds deserve to be welcomed with gratitude. Families gathered, neighbors celebrated, stories were remembered, songs were sung. The changing year became something shared rather than merely observed, strengthening the bonds between people, the land beneath their feet, and the quiet mysteries that accompanied every passing season. As we continue our journey beneath the stars, the great wheel of the year turns steadily onward, carrying us toward the festivals that would become the heart of the Celtic calendar. Among them were two nights remembered above all others, evenings when the old storytellers believed the boundary between the human world and the hidden world grew wonderfully, and sometimes mysteriously, thin. The stars shine brightly above the quiet hills as we continue our gentle walk through the countryside. A cool breeze carries the scent of wood smoke from distant cottages, while the last leaves of autumn rustle softly beneath our feet. The harvest has been gathered, the fields lie peacefully at rest, and another growing season has drawn to its natural close. There is a feeling that belongs especially to late autumn. The landscape is neither asleep nor fully awake. The abundance of summer has become memory, while winter has not yet completely settled across the hills. The earth itself seems to pause between two seasons, lingering for a quiet moment before taking the next step in its endless journey. For the Celtic peoples, such moments carried profound meaning. Throughout this journey, we have seen that the hidden people were often associated with places that stood between one thing and another. Ancient wells joined the world above with the waters below. Forest clearings opened between dense woodlands. Dawn stood between darkness and daylight, while dusk gently welcomed the coming night. It was only natural that the turning of the year should also possess moments when the ordinary world seemed to rest upon a threshold. No festival expressed this more clearly than Samhain, traditionally observed as the season of summer gave way to the quiet months of winter. To the people who first celebrated it, this was not simply the arrival of colder weather. It marked the beginning of a new cycle, a time when livestock returned from distant pastures, the harvest work had been completed, and families gathered once more around the warmth of the hearth. The busy months of labor gave way to evenings filled with conversation, music, and the sharing of stories that had patiently waited all year to be told. It was during these peaceful gatherings that many of the oldest traditions concerning the hidden world were remembered. Storytellers spoke of a night when the boundary between worlds seemed gentler than at any other time of year. The unseen neighbors who usually remain just beyond ordinary sight were imagined drawing a little closer, not as invading strangers, but as fellow travelers moving through the same turning of the seasons. The image is remarkably gentle when viewed through the oldest traditions. Two neighboring worlds, each continuing its own quiet life, separated most of the year by a boundary as delicate as morning mist. Yet on this one night the distance between them seemed to narrow until both could almost hear one another's songs carried across the fields. Perhaps this is why hospitality became such an important part of the season. Families welcomed friends into their homes, shared food generously, and remembered those who had gone before them. The visible community and the invisible community were not always imagined as entirely separate. Both belonged to the same ancient landscape, shaped by many generations who had lived, worked, celebrated, and rested beneath these familiar hills. Over the centuries, many local customs grew around Samhain, differing from one valley to the next and from one village to another. Some communities lit great fires upon the hills. Others gathered indoors to tell stories while the autumn wind moved quietly outside. Apples, nuts, and the final fruits of the harvest often became part of seasonal games and celebrations, reminding everyone that gratitude belonged alongside mystery. Like so much of Celtic folklore, these customs blended the PRA to call with the symbolic. The harvest truly had ended. Winter truly was approaching. Families truly were gathering together. Upon these very real experiences, the imagination gently built another layer, suggesting that if human communities were coming together on this night, perhaps the hidden world was doing the same. Whether one understood these traditions as matters of belief, poetry, or cultural memory, they reveal something enduring about the Celtic imagination. The changing seasons were never merely dates upon a calendar. They were living passages through time, inviting people to notice that every ending quietly carries the promise of another beginning. As autumn slowly yields to the long, peaceful nights of winter, another turning of the year waits beyond the horizon, where Samhain welcomes the world into its season of rest. Another festival celebrates its joyful awakening. When blossoms return to the hedgerows, birds once again fill the morning air, and the hills seem to breathe with new life after the quiet sleep of winter. The long nights of winter pass with quiet patience. Snow lingers upon the highest hills a little longer than expected. Streams run cold with fresh mountain water, and the bare branches of ancient trees wait silently through the final weeks of the season. Then, almost without notice, the first signs of spring begin to appear. Tiny green buds emerge along the hedgerows. Birdsong returns before sunrise. Wildflowers brighten the woodland floor where only weeks before the earth seemed asleep beneath winter's gentle embrace. The land awakens one careful step at a time. For the Celtic peoples, this gradual return of life was every bit as meaningful as the quiet arrival of autumn. If Samhain welcomed the season of rest, Beltane celebrated the joyful renewal of the earth. It marked the beginning of summer when animals once again grazed in open pastures and fields promised another season of growth beneath the lengthening days. Like the turning of autumn, this was understood as more than a change upon the calendar. The countryside itself seemed transformed. The fragrance of blossoms drifted across the valleys, bees returned to their patient work among the flowers, and every sunrise arrived a little earlier than the one before. Life expanded in every direction, quietly reminding those who lived close to the land that the seasons always carried hope within their endless turning. Many traditions associated Beltane with light. Bonfires were kindled upon hilltops, their warm glow visible across the countryside as neighboring communities welcomed the arrival of the brighter months. The flames became symbols of renewal and protection, gathering families and friends together beneath the open sky while music and laughter carried across the evening air. In many regions, livestock were led between two carefully tended fires before beginning their summer grazing. To modern ears, the custom may seem unusual, yet to those who practiced it, the ritual expressed both gratitude and hope. Another season of abundance was beginning, and the community marked that moment with quiet ceremony rather than taking it for granted. The hidden people naturally found their place within these celebrations. If Samhain was remembered as a time when the unseen world seemed to draw close during the quiet of autumn, Beltane reflected the same closeness through the joyful energy of spring. Blossoming orchards, flowering meadows, and sunlit hillsides became landscapes where the hidden neighbors were imagined moving with the renewed life of the earth itself. The old stories often describe these encounters with remarkable gentleness. A melody drifting across a meadow at sunrise, a graceful figure glimpsed among blooming hawthorn, fresh footprints crossing dew-covered grass before quietly disappearing into the morning light. Nothing lingered long enough to demand belief. Instead, each moment invited careful attention, rewarding those who walked slowly enough to notice the small wonders unfolding around them. Perhaps this balance between Samhain and Beltane reveals one of the deepest ideas within Celtic tradition. The hidden world was never separated from the rhythms of nature. As the land rested, so too did many of its stories. As the hills awakened beneath the warmth of spring, those same stories blossomed once again, returning with the birds, the flowers, and the lengthening days. Neither festival stood alone. Together they formed two great gateways within the turning year, each reminding people that every ending quietly prepares another beginning. One welcomed reflection beside the winter hearth, while the other invited joyful celebration beneath the open sky. Between them, the seasons continued their endless dance, carrying both the human world and the hidden world through another graceful circle of time. As twilight settles over the flowering hills, the first stars begin to appear above the western horizon. Somewhere beyond the hedgerows, a hawthorn tree stands in quiet bloom, its white blossoms glowing softly in the evening light. Among all the trees of the Celtic lands, few gathered more stories than the humble hawthorn, whose blossoms and branches became enduring symbols of the unseen world and its oldest traditions. The path carries us gently beyond the flowering meadows until we arrive at a solitary tree standing quietly upon a low rise. Its branches are not especially tall, nor is its trunk as broad as the ancient oaks we have passed beneath. Yet something about it immediately draws the eye. The branches twist gracefully toward the sky, clothed in delicate white blossoms that seem to glow in the gentle light of early evening. Bees move patiently from flower to flower, filling the still air with a soft and steady hum, while the fragrance of the blossoms drifts across the hillside on the cooling breeze. Among all the trees that grow throughout Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and the Isle of Man, few gathered more stories than the humble hawthorn. It often stood alone, in the middle of a pasture, beside an old lane, upon a gentle hill where no other tree seemed to grow. Rather than clearing such a tree away, many people simply left it standing. Roads curved around it, stone walls bent to accommodate it, and fields were worked with the quiet understanding that the hawthorn had earned its place upon the landscape. To modern eyes, this might seem like little more than respect for a beautiful old tree. To generations of Celtic storytellers, however, the hawthorn represented something far deeper. It was often regarded as one of the places where the hidden world brushed gently against our own. Not every hawthorn carried such traditions, of course, but certain trees became known within their local communities as places deserving particular courtesy. People greeted them with respect, avoided damaging their branches, and thought carefully before disturbing the ground nearby. The stories themselves are remarkably restrained. They rarely speak of punishment or anger. Instead, they suggest that good neighbors recognize the value of treating meaningful places with care. If a spring deserved gratitude for its clear water, and an ancient woodland deserved quiet footsteps beneath its branches, then a hawthorn remembered by generations deserved the same simple courtesy. Perhaps that is one reason these traditions endured for so long. The tree itself offered shelter to birds, blossoms for bees, and bright berries that sustained wildlife through the colder months. Long before anyone connected the hawthorn with the hidden people, it had already become an important part of the countryside. Folklore simply added another layer of appreciation to something that was already quietly valuable. Even today, many old hawthorns continue to stand where they have stood for centuries. Some remain beside winding country roads. Others overlook peaceful valleys or mark forgotten boundaries between fields. Whether one approaches them as living history, as symbols of ancient folklore, or simply as beautiful trees shaped by time, they possess a quiet dignity that encourages a moment of reflection. There is a gentle lesson hidden within these traditions. Respect is often expressed through small actions. Walking around a tree instead of through its roots. Leaving blossoms untouched for those who come after us. Pausing long enough to appreciate something that asks for nothing in return. Such habits reveal as much about the people practicing them as they do about the stories themselves. The hidden people, in many ways, became teachers of attentiveness. Their presence encouraged careful observation, thoughtful behavior, and an awareness that the landscape was more than scenery passing beyond a traveler's window. Hills, forests, streams, and trees became companions rather than possessions, each deserving gratitude for the quiet gifts they offered day after day. As the last light of evening settles across the hillside, the white blossoms seem almost to gather the fading glow of the sunset before gradually blending into the coming twilight. The tree stands exactly where it has always stood, asking for nothing, offering shelter to many, and quietly keeping its place within both the landscape and the stories that have surrounded it for countless generations. Beyond the hill, another path disappears into the deepening dusk. Somewhere along that winding trail, travelers have long spoken of meeting unexpected companions, some familiar, some mysterious, and a few remembered for generations because a single encounter was enough to change the way they understood the hidden world forever. Twilight settles softly across the hills as the last glow of sunset fades beyond the western horizon. The countryside grows wonderfully quiet, and the first stars begin appearing overhead while a gentle breeze stirs the grasses along the narrow path before us. In the peaceful moments between daylight and darkness, the imagination has always found room to wander. A distant movement upon a hillside. The faint sound of music carried farther than the evening wind should allow. A line of figures passing silently along an ancient ridge before gradually disappearing into the gathering mist. Throughout the Celtic lands, stories like these were told with remarkable consistency. Rather than describing a single hidden traveler, many traditions spoke of entire companies moving together across the landscape. They were not imagined hurrying from one destination to another. Instead, they traveled with quiet purpose, following paths that seemed invisible to everyone except themselves. These gatherings were often remembered as graceful processions. The figures moved without confusion or disorder, each keeping pace with the others as naturally as birds flying together across an evening sky. Lanterns sometimes glimmered among them like tiny stars descending to the earth, while music drifted gently ahead of the procession before fading once more into the night. Those who claim to witness such sights rarely describe them with certainty. Instead, they remembered impressions. The shimmer of pale clothing between distant trees. The quiet rhythm of footsteps that never quite reached the listener. The unmistakable feeling that many travelers had passed nearby, even though the path stood empty only moments later. Such accounts possess a striking gentleness. The hidden company was seldom portrayed as threatening ordinary travelers. More often, it simply continued upon its own journey, neither seeking attention nor avoiding it. The visible world and the hidden world shared the same hills for a few peaceful moments before quietly drifting apart once again. Perhaps this reflects one of the oldest ideas within Celtic folklore. The hidden people were imagined as neighbors with lives of their own. They celebrated, they remembered, they journeyed. Just as families visited neighboring villages, gathered for seasonal festivals, or traveled familiar roads from one valley to the next, the unseen community was also believed to move through the countryside according to traditions known only to them. Many storytellers emphasize the importance of simple courtesy during such encounters. If someone believed they had unexpectedly crossed the path of the hidden company, the wisest response was neither fear nor curiosity. One simply stepped aside, allowed the procession to continue uninterrupted, and carried on with quiet respect. There was no need to follow, no need to call out. Good neighbors did not intrude upon one another's journeys. Whether these stories arose from distant torchlight glimpsed through evening mist, moonlight playing across the hillside, or the natural tendency of the imagination to find patterns within the landscape, they reveal something enduring about the way people understood the world around them. Not every path belonged entirely to us. Some roads seemed older than memory. Some travelers appeared to walk according to customs that had been followed for generations beyond counting. The stories invited listeners to imagine that every hillside might carry more history than could be seen in a single lifetime. There is also a quiet beauty in the restraint of these traditions. The procession does not stop. No great explanation is offered. The hidden travelers neither introduce themselves nor ask to be understood. They simply continue over the ridge until distance and darkness gently gather them from sight, leaving behind only music that lingers for a few peaceful moments before becoming part of the evening wind. As we watch the last of the unseen company disappear beyond the hill, the moon rises a little higher above the trees, bathing the countryside in soft silver light. Under such gentle illumination, familiar paths begin to look wonderfully unfamiliar, and it becomes easy to understand why so many old stories speak of travelers who followed a moonlit road only to discover that it had carried them somewhere they had never expected to be. As we leave the crossroads behind, the moonlit hills stretch quietly into the distance. Heather ripples beneath the evening breeze, and somewhere beyond the next ridge, a stream catches the moonlight as it winds through the valley like a ribbon of polished silver. The countryside feels peaceful, little change from the landscapes that inspired these stories so many centuries ago. One of the greatest surprises awaiting anyone who begins exploring Celtic folklore is how familiar the hidden people often appeared. Modern illustrations frequently imagine fairies as tiny winged creatures no taller than a person's hand, but those images belong to a much later tradition. The oldest stories from Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and the Isle of Man usually describe something very different. The hidden people were often said to resemble ordinary men and women. They walked familiar paths, spoke with quiet confidence, gathered with family and friends, and lived lives that appeared remarkably similar to those of the human communities around them. At first glance, a traveler might notice nothing unusual about someone standing upon a distant hillside or resting beneath the shade of an old tree. Only after the meeting had ended did memory begin to gather the smaller details. The stranger's clothing seemed unusually beautiful, woven with extraordinary skill, and displaying colors that shifted softly in the changing light. Their face appeared youthful yet somehow timeless, while every movement carried an effortless grace that seemed perfectly suited to the quiet rhythm of the countryside. Many stories begin in exactly this gentle way. A shepherd notices someone watching over a distant valley. A woman walking home from a spring exchanges a few pleasant words with a courteous traveler. A musician returning after an evening gathering shares part of the road with a quiet companion before the two politely go their separate ways. Nothing about these encounters appears extraordinary while they are taking place. It is only later, sometimes hours or even days afterward, that the ordinary begins to seem quietly remarkable. The traveler cannot quite remember where the stranger came from or which path they followed when they departed. No footprints remain upon the soft earth where someone had been standing only moments before, and familiar landmarks somehow seem different when the meeting is remembered in the calm light of another day. The old storytellers rarely hurried to explain such mysteries. They simply preserved the accounts as they had received them, allowing listeners to decide for themselves what might have happened. That quiet restraint gives many of these traditions their lasting charm, for certainty was never the goal. Wonder was enough. Perhaps that is why the hidden people have remained so compelling across the centuries. They are remembered not through dramatic displays of power, but through moments of simple courtesy, shared conversation, unexpected kindness, or music heard drifting across a peaceful hillside. The extraordinary arrives so gently that it is almost possible to mistake it for an ordinary evening until memory quietly reveals another layer beneath the experience. There is also a quiet humility woven throughout these traditions. The storytellers never claimed to possess complete knowledge of the hidden world, nor did they insist that every unusual encounter belonged to the unseen people. Instead, they offered possibilities, preserving the stories with care while leaving space for mystery to remain where certainty could not honestly be found. As we continue beneath the moonlit sky, the path begins climbing once more toward a broad ridge overlooking the valleys below. Somewhere beyond those distant hills, the old stories tell of remarkable women who guarded lonely streams, watched over mountain passes, or emerged from the sea itself, each carrying traditions as ancient and enduring as the landscape they called home. As the moon climbs higher above the hills, the quiet landscape seems to settle into an even deeper stillness. The valleys below are wrapped in a soft veil of mist, while ancient mounds rise gently from the earth like sleeping giants whose stories have never been entirely forgotten. It is within these places that many of the old tales speak of rulers whose kingdoms were hidden from ordinary sight. Unlike the kings celebrated in medieval chronicles, the rulers of the hidden world were often remembered as queens. Throughout the Celtic lands, stories tell of wise and powerful women who governed enchanted realms with patience, dignity, and an authority that seemed as ancient as the hills themselves. They were not distant figures who ruled through fear, but guardians of lands where beauty, music, and harmony were treasured above conquest. Many of these queens were said to possess extraordinary wisdom. They understood the changing seasons, the language of birds, the quiet rhythm of flowing water, and the ancient customs that maintained peace between their own people and the human world. They seldom hurried, seldom raised their voices, and rarely appeared unless there was a reason for doing so. Their calm presence reflected the timeless nature of the lands they governed. Among the oldest Irish traditions is the story of a remarkable queen named Cliona, whose name has echoed through folklore for many centuries. She was associated with the southern coast of Ireland, where the sea meets rugged cliffs and quiet coves shaped by wind and tide. In later stories, she became known as one of the great queens of the hidden people. Her palace said to lie beyond ordinary sight in a landscape where music drifted constantly through the air, and every season seemed touched by everlasting spring. Other traditions speak of queens whose names have faded from memory, though their presence remains woven into the landscape itself. A solitary hill, an ancient mound, or a quiet valley might all be remembered as belonging to a powerful lady of the hidden world. Even when her name was forgotten, the place retained its reputation, and travelers often passed with quiet respect rather than idle curiosity. These queens were not remembered simply because they possessed magical abilities. They represented something deeper within Celtic tradition, the belief that true authority was inseparable from the land itself. A worthy ruler cared for rivers, forests, fields, and the creatures that lived among them, for the health of the kingdom could never be separated from the health of the landscape. This idea appears again and again throughout Celtic mythology, where harmony between ruler and land brings abundance, while neglect brings hardship. For that reason, meetings with the fairy queen were rarely accidental. The old storytellers often describe such encounters taking place when a traveler had wandered respectfully through the countryside, treating ancient places with care and showing kindness to those they met along the way. Whether these actions truly opened a doorway to the hidden world or simply reflected the values cherished by the storytellers themselves is impossible to know. The stories quietly leave that question for each listener to consider. Descriptions of these queens are remarkably consistent despite originating in different regions. They are often clothed in garments that shimmer softly in moonlight or sunlight alike, their cloaks embroidered with patterns inspired by leaves, flowing water, stars, or wildflowers. Gold appears in the stories, but never in overwhelming abundance. Instead, beauty is expressed through craftsmanship, graceful movement, and an effortless sense of belonging within the natural world. Perhaps that quiet connection to the landscape explains why these queens have remained such enduring figures in Celtic folklore. They remind us that the hidden world was never imagined as a kingdom apart from nature, but as its unseen companion. Every flowering meadow, every ancient oak, every mist-covered hill became part of a realm watched over by guardians whose presence was felt more often than it was seen. Leaving the ancient hills behind, our path descends into a quiet glen where a narrow stream winds between moss-covered stones. The water moves gently beneath overhanging branches, carrying the reflections of the moon downstream in shimmering ribbons of silver. Here, among the cool mist and the steady murmur of flowing water, the old storytellers believed one might occasionally encounter a solitary figure whose work had continued for longer than anyone could remember. In the Highlands of Scotland, she is known as the Ben Nia. Her name is often translated as the washerwoman, yet that simple description captures only a small part of the tradition. She belongs to a family of Celtic figures associated with fate, memory, and the quiet passage from one life into the next. Rather than inspiring terror, she invites reflection, reminding listeners that every life follows a path with both a beginning and an ending. The oldest stories place her beside lonely streams, shallow fords, or pools where clear water gathers before continuing its journey toward the sea. Travelers sometimes noticed her in the fading light, kneeling quietly at the water's edge while washing garments that glistened in the current. The rhythmic movement of her hands became almost hypnotic, blending with the sound of the stream until water and motion seemed to become one. No one could say exactly how long she had been there. Some believe she appeared only on certain evenings, while others thought she had always occupied the same peaceful place, returning generation after generation like the changing of the seasons. The uncertainty became part of the story itself, for the hidden world was rarely measured by ordinary time. Descriptions of the Benia differ from one region to another. In some accounts, she appears as a young woman with long dark hair that falls across her shoulders as she bends over the water. In others, she is an older woman whose face reflects both kindness and immeasurable age, as though she has witnessed countless generations pass through the glens she quietly watches. The details change, yet her patient presence beside flowing water remains remarkably constant throughout the tradition. Unlike many later supernatural tales, these encounters were not always filled with fear. Some stories describe respectful conversations between travelers and the mysterious washer. Others tell of people who quietly observed her from a distance before continuing on their journey without disturbing her work. Courtesy remained as important here as it was in every other meeting with the hidden people. Modern readers often search for a single explanation of who she was, yet the old storytellers seemed comfortable allowing several meanings to exist at once. She could be understood as a guardian of sacred places, a keeper of ancient memories, a figure connected with destiny, or simply one of the many mysterious inhabitants of the hidden world whose purpose was never fully explained. The mystery itself was part of her enduring power. There is also something deeply peaceful about the setting in which she appears. Streams have always marked places of renewal within Celtic tradition. Water wears away stone not through force, but through quiet persistence, and every current carries away yesterday while making room for tomorrow. It seems fitting that one of the hidden world's most memorable figures should be found where flowing water gently reminds us that nothing in nature ever truly stands still. As the stream continues its winding journey through the moonlit glen, the quiet figure gradually fades into the silver mist until it becomes impossible to tell where moonlight ends and memory begins. The old stories leave us with that image rather than an explanation, inviting us to continue deeper into the hidden world where other remarkable beings wait beneath ancient trees, beside lonely mountains, and along the wild edges of the sea. As the stream leaves the glen, it gradually widens into a quiet mountain lake, where the water lies as smooth as polished glass. Gentle ripples carry the reflection of the moon across the surface, while dark peaks stand silently around the shore like ancient guardians watching over a place that has long been treasured in story and song. In Wales, lakes such as these were often believed to conceal doorways into the hidden world. Among the most graceful figures in Welsh tradition are the Gwragedd and Noon, whose name is often translated as the ladies of the Otherworld. Unlike many fairy beings who preferred wooded hills or ancient mounds, these mysterious women were closely connected with mountain lakes, whose still waters reflected both the sky above and the unseen realm below. The quiet beauty of these places seemed perfectly suited to stories that blurred the boundary between the familiar world and one just beyond ordinary sight. The oldest legends often begin with an ordinary person visiting the shore of a lonely lake. A shepherd watches over sheep grazing on the mountainside, or a farmer pauses to rest after a long day's work. As evening settles across the water, a beautiful woman emerges from the mist, appearing as naturally as though she had always belonged to the landscape. There is rarely a flash of magic or a dramatic entrance. Instead, the encounter unfolds with the same quiet patience that marks so many of the Celtic tales. Several Welsh legends tell of marriages between these mysterious women and human men. The stories usually begin with happiness and abundance, for the lady brings knowledge, prosperity, and unusual wisdom into her new home. She often teaches skills that benefit the entire community, reminding listeners that the hidden world was not always separate from human life. Sometimes its gifts could be shared, provided respect and trust remained unbroken. Yet these marriages almost always rested upon a simple promise. The husband was asked to honor a particular condition, one that often seemed surprisingly small or easy to keep. In one version, he must never strike his wife, even lightly. In another, he must avoid speaking harshly under certain circumstances. The exact promise changes from story to story, but the lesson remains remarkably consistent. Eventually, the promise is broken. It is seldom broken through cruelty. More often it happens through carelessness, misunderstanding, or a moment of ordinary human impatience. The hidden world does not disappear in anger. Instead, the lady quietly gathers her belongings, calls to the animals or treasure she had brought from her homeland, and returns across the still waters to the place from which she first appeared. There is a gentle sadness to these stories that differs from many fairy tales told in later centuries. The ending is not one of punishment, but of separation. Two worlds that briefly live together slowly drift apart once again, leaving only memories of what had once been possible. The mountain lake remains behind, calm and beautiful, inviting each new generation to wonder whether the old stories might still contain a measure of truth. Scholars have often suggested that these legends preserve ancient ideas about the relationship between people and the natural world. The mysterious lady offers blessings when harmony is maintained, yet she cannot remain where promises are forgotten or respect begins to fade. Whether understood as folklore, symbolism, or a reflection of older spiritual beliefs, the stories continue to speak quietly about the importance of keeping one's word. Even today, many of the lakes associated with these traditions possess a remarkable stillness. Looking across their clear waters on a calm evening, it is easy to understand why generations of storytellers imagined another world lying just beyond the surface. The reflections seem almost too perfect, inviting the comforting thought that beneath the quiet water another landscape may rest, hidden from ordinary sight, but never entirely absent from the imagination. As our journey continues, we leave the peaceful lakes behind and follow a winding path toward the rugged hills of Scotland once more. There, among lonely glens and beneath the shelter of ancient pines, another remarkable inhabitant of the hidden world is said to wander, one whose nature combines both gentleness and wildness in equal measure. The mountain path winds through a peaceful highland glen where towering pines stand watch over carpets of moss and clusters of purple heather. A cool breeze carries the fragrance of evergreen and damp earth, while somewhere beyond the trees a small waterfall sings its endless song. It is the kind of quiet place where the ancient stories seem perfectly at home, for the highlands have long been remembered as a landscape where the hidden world lingered close beside the ordinary one. Among the most intriguing inhabitants of these glens is the Glashtig, a figure whose stories have been passed from one generation to the next throughout the Scottish Highlands. Unlike many fairy beings whose appearance remains almost entirely human, the Glashtig is often described as possessing the graceful form of a beautiful woman, while concealing the legs or hooves of a deer or goat beneath her long green garments. The flowing dress is said to hide the secret so completely that a casual traveler might never suspect anything unusual. The color green appears again and again throughout these traditions. It is the color of growing forests, quiet meadows, moss-covered stones, and the hills that shelter the hidden people. By clothing the Glashtig in green, the storytellers gently remind us that she belongs completely to the landscape itself. She is not a visitor passing through the glen, but one of its oldest caretakers, as much a part of the mountains as the streams that flow through them or the pines that sway above them. Many stories portray the Glashtig as a guardian of wild animals and lonely places. Deer graze without fear where she wanders, and birds continue their evening songs as though recognizing her presence. Shepherds sometimes believed that flocks left in her care would be protected through the night, provided they themselves had treated the land with kindness and respect. In this way, she reflects a familiar theme throughout Celtic folklore, where the well-being of people, animals, and the landscape are closely woven together. Yet the Glashtig is not remembered as entirely gentle. Like many of the hidden people, she possesses a nature that cannot easily be described in simple terms. Some tales speak of generous acts toward those who show courtesy, while others warn that thoughtless behavior or unnecessary greed may earn an unwelcome lesson. The stories do not present her as cruel, but neither do they suggest that the natural world exists only for human convenience. Perhaps that balance is what has allowed her legend to endure. The Highlands themselves are places of remarkable beauty, but they also command respect. Weather changes quickly among the mountains, narrow paths can disappear into mist, and peaceful streams may become swift after heavy rain. The Glashtig seems almost to embody that same quiet balance, reminding listeners that beauty and power often exist together. The old storytellers rarely described dramatic confrontations. Instead, they preferred quieter encounters that left room for reflection. A traveler might awaken to discover that lost cattle had somehow returned during the night. A hunter who took more than he needed might find himself wandering in circles until dawn. Someone who cared for an injured animal could later receive unexpected good fortune without ever learning exactly how it had come about. Whether these events were gifts from the Glashtig or simply the mysterious generosity of the hills was left for each listener to decide. There is something comforting about the way these stories encourage humility. They suggest that the world is shared with countless living creatures, both seen and unseen, each deserving a measure of consideration. Long before conservation became a modern idea, these traditions quietly encouraged people to harvest wisely, travel respectfully, and remember that every forest and glen possesses a character of its own. As the moon continues its steady climb across the highland sky, The trees gradually thin, and the scent of salt begins to mingle with the cool night air. The distant sound of waves replaces the murmur of mountain streams, and the hidden world prepares to reveal one of its most beloved and enduring legends, where seals slip quietly through moonlit waters, and the boundary between sea and shore becomes wonderfully uncertain. The scent of pine gradually fades as our path reaches the rugged coastline, where dark cliffs rise above a quiet sea shimmering beneath the moon. Waves roll steadily toward the shore, their gentle rhythm echoing across lonely beaches scattered with smooth stones and tangled seaweed. Far offshore, seals drift upon the calm water, disappearing beneath the surface before quietly emerging once again in the silver light. Along the coast of Scotland, Ireland, and the islands of the North Atlantic, generations of storytellers looked upon these graceful animals with particular affection. Their large, thoughtful eyes and gentle movements inspired the belief that they were far more than ordinary creatures of the sea. Beneath their sleek coats, many believed, lived another people whose true home lay somewhere between the ocean and the hidden world. These were the Selkies, perhaps the most widely loved of all the Celtic fairy beings. By day they swam through cold northern waters as seals, perfectly suited to the tides and changing seasons of the sea. Yet on certain quiet nights, especially beneath the full moon, they were said to come ashore, remove their seal skins, and walk upon the land in human form. The stories describe these moments with remarkable tenderness. Hidden among the rocks, a seal carefully slips free from its silvery skin, as though removing a familiar cloak after a long journey. Standing upon the moonlit shore is not an animal, but a graceful man or woman whose movements carry the quiet confidence of someone equally at home beneath the waves and beneath the stars. The discarded seal skin remains close at hand, for without it the journey back to the sea cannot be made. Many of the old tales tell of fishermen or islanders who unexpectedly witnessed these transformations. The beauty of the Selkies often inspired both wonder and longing, and some stories describe a human hiding the seal skin in hopes that the mysterious visitor would remain on land forever. What follows, however, is rarely a simple romance. For a time, happiness often seems possible. Homes are built, children are born, and daily life unfolds with quiet contentment. The Selkie proves to be a loving companion, bringing warmth, music, and kindness into the household. Yet beneath that happiness there always remains a quiet longing, as constant as the tide itself. Eventually the hidden seal skin is found. Sometimes it has been tucked away in a chest, hidden beneath floorboards, or forgotten in the corner of an old loft. The moment the Selkie discovers it, there is little hesitation. The call of the sea has never faded. With affection for the family left behind, but an equally powerful love for the ocean that shaped their earliest memories, the Selkie returns to the shore, slips once more into the waiting skin, and disappears beneath the waves. There is no anger in these stories, only a quiet sadness that has touched listeners for centuries. The ending reminds us that love alone cannot erase the deepest part of someone's nature. Home is more than a place where one happens to live. It is the landscape, the rhythm, and the belonging that have shaped a life from the very beginning. Perhaps that gentle sorrow explains why Selkie legends have remained so beloved across the generations. They speak not only about magical beings, but about experiences that are deeply human. Many people have known the feeling of living far from home, of missing a familiar landscape, or of carrying two worlds within their hearts at the same time. The old storytellers wrapped those emotions in the image of a seal returning to the sea, creating a legend that feels timeless because its emotions remain so familiar. Even today, watching seals rest upon lonely rocks or glide effortlessly through quiet northern waters, it is easy to understand why these stories took root. Their curious faces seem almost to invite recognition, as though they carry memories from a world just beyond our own. Whether viewed as folklore or simply as a beautiful expression of humanity's connection with the sea, the Selkies continue to remind us that the hidden world was never imagined as distant. It has always existed alongside the landscapes people loved most deeply. Leaving the shore behind, we follow a narrow path that climbs once more toward the windswept hills. There, where mist gathers among ancient stones and lonely mountain roads disappear into the clouds, another mysterious figure waits patiently for travelers who wander a little farther than they intended. The sea gradually disappears behind us as the path climbs into the mountains of northern Wales. Here the air grows cooler and soft banks of mist drift slowly across the hillsides, sometimes revealing distant ridges before hiding them once again. Sheep graze quietly upon the slopes, while weathered stone walls trace the contours of the valleys below. It is a landscape where the changing weather can transform familiar paths into places of quiet uncertainty within only a few moments. Among these lonely mountains, generations of Welsh storytellers spoke of mysterious women known as the Guhion. They were said to wander the high places where clouds gathered around ancient peaks and narrow trails disappeared into the fog. Travelers occasionally caught sight of a solitary figure standing motionless upon a distant ridge, only to discover that she had vanished by the time they drew closer. Unlike many of the hidden people, the Guhion were closely connected with the mountain mist itself. Their appearance was often as brief as the opening of the clouds after a passing rain. A traveler might glimpse flowing hair, the outline of a long cloak, or the faint movement of someone walking just beyond the edge of clear sight. The uncertainty became part of the experience, for no one could ever be entirely certain whether they had truly seen one of the hidden people or whether the mountain had simply been playing gentle tricks with light and shadow. The old stories sometimes describe the Guhion leading travelers away from the safest path. Modern readers may imagine this as an act of mischief, yet the older traditions often suggest something more thoughtful. Mountains demand respect. A careless traveler who ignored changing weather, wandered without preparation, or allowed pride to replace caution might soon find that familiar landmarks had quietly disappeared into the mist. The stories remind us that wisdom begins with recognizing the limits of our own certainty. Not every encounter ended in confusion. There are also gentle tales in which a respectful traveler receives unexpected help. A distant voice calls through the fog, guiding someone back toward the proper trail. A figure briefly appears upon a ridge, pointing silently toward a safer crossing before fading into the clouds once more. Whether these mysterious guides were truly the Guhion, or simply expressions of hope preserved in story, no one could say with confidence. The mountains themselves help explain why such legends endured. Mist changes every landscape it touches. Familiar valleys become unfamiliar, Nearby hills seem farther away, and sound carries in surprising ways through the cool evening air. Even today, anyone who has walked among cloud-covered peaks understands how quickly the ordinary world can become wonderfully mysterious without requiring anything supernatural at all. Like so many of the hidden people, the Guhyan seem to embody the character of the landscape itself. They are neither wholly welcoming nor deliberately hostile. Instead, they reflect the mountains they inhabit, offering beauty to those who travel thoughtfully, while quietly humbling those who forget that nature follows its own rhythms rather than human expectations. There is a quiet wisdom hidden within these stories. The world does not always reveal itself completely at first glance, and neither should people assume that every mystery requires an immediate answer. Sometimes the wisest course is simply to slow one's pace, observe carefully, and allow the landscape to reveal itself in its own time. That patient way of seeing lies at the heart of many Celtic traditions and appears again and again throughout the stories of the hidden world. As the morning mist slowly lifts from the Welsh mountains, our journey continues toward quieter fields and ancient farmsteads where another group of hidden neighbors was believed to live much closer to human homes. They were seldom seen, yet their presence was felt in freshly churned butter, neatly tended hearths, and the small acts of quiet generosity that helped everyday life unfold with unexpected grace. As the mountains gradually give way to gentler countryside, the winding path passes through fields bordered by ancient stone walls and weathered hedgerows. Small cottages rest beneath spreading oaks, their windows glowing softly in the evening while wisps of chimney smoke drift peacefully into the cool night air. The landscape feels welcoming, reminding us that the hidden world was not believed to exist only in distant wilderness, but sometimes just beyond the edge of everyday life. Many Celtic traditions speak of hidden neighbors who lived surprisingly close to human communities. They were not rulers beneath fairy hills or mysterious women beside lonely streams. Instead, they quietly shared the same valleys and woodlands as farmers, shepherds, and craftsmen, seldom revealing themselves, but leaving behind small reminders that they had passed nearby. The old stories often describe these unseen neighbors as industrious rather than idle. They tended their own homes, cared for animals, celebrated festivals, and gathered for music and dancing much as human communities did. Their lives were imagined not as endless displays of magic, but as reflections of the ordinary world, touched by greater beauty and guided by older customs. Because they lived so near, people developed small habits of courtesy that became part of everyday life. A little fresh cream might be left upon a doorstep before nightfall. A portion of warm bread could be placed upon a windowsill after the evening meal. These simple offerings were not acts of fear, but quiet expressions of respect toward neighbors who were rarely seen, but never entirely forgotten. No one expected a reward. The offerings reflected an older understanding that generosity helps strengthen every community, whether its members are visible or hidden. If kindness was freely given, kindness often seemed to return in unexpected ways. A healthy harvest, a recovered animal, or an unusually peaceful season might all be remembered with quiet gratitude, even if no one claimed to know exactly how such blessings had arrived. The stories also caution against unnecessary curiosity. Most people accepted that the hidden folk valued their privacy just as ordinary families did. peering through windows, following mysterious lights, or attempting to discover hidden dwellings was considered discourteous. Respect meant allowing the unseen world to remain unseen unless it chose otherwise. There is something remarkably gentle about this relationship. Unlike later fairy tales that emphasize conflict, many Celtic traditions imagine two neighboring communities sharing the same landscape while maintaining a respectful distance from one another. Neither world seeks to dominate the other. Instead, both flourish when courtesy, patience, and humility guide everyday life. Perhaps this explains why the hidden people were often spoken of with affection rather than fear. They became part of the familiar rhythm of the countryside. Children grew up hearing that certain fields should be crossed respectfully, that ancient trees deserve careful treatment, and that a quiet greeting offered into the evening air cost nothing, even if no reply was expected. These customs gently encouraged people to move through the world with greater awareness of the lives surrounding them. Whether these unseen neighbors ever truly walked beside country lanes is a question that folklore wisely leaves unanswered. What remains beyond doubt is the enduring lesson carried by the stories themselves. A landscape becomes richer when we imagine it shared with others, and ordinary acts of kindness become more meaningful when offered without expecting recognition or reward. As darkness settles over the peaceful cottages, faint music drifts across the fields from somewhere beyond the old hedgerows. It is cheerful, lively, and wonderfully inviting, for tonight the hidden people are gathering to celebrate. And among the oldest stories of the Fae, few are remembered with greater delight than their love of music, dancing, and joyful feasting. Our journey has carried us across moonlit hills, through ancient forests, beside quiet streams, over mist-covered mountains, and along peaceful shores where the sea meets the land. We have wandered among fairy mounds, paused beside sacred wells, listened for distant music, and met some of the remarkable beings who were believed to inhabit the hidden world. As our path begins to lead gently homeward, it is natural to wonder why these stories have remained alive for so many centuries. The oldest fairy tales have survived because they are about far more than fairies. Beneath every legend lies a quiet reflection on the relationship between people and the world around them. The hidden people encouraged listeners to treat the land with care, to show kindness to strangers, to keep promises, and to remember that every action carries consequences beyond those we immediately see. Whether or not someone believed the stories literally mattered less than the values they quietly passed from one generation to the next. Respect is perhaps the most enduring lesson of all. Ancient trees were treated with care, not only because they might shelter unseen neighbors, but because they had stood watch over the landscape for centuries. Clear streams deserve protection because they gave life to every creature that depended upon them. Hills, lakes, and forests were not simply resources to be used, but places worthy of gratitude. Long before people spoke of protecting the natural world, these stories gently encouraged exactly that way of thinking. Humility also appears throughout the traditions. Again and again, the tales remind us that human knowledge has limits. There are mysteries we may never completely understand, paths whose endings remain hidden from view, and moments when the wisest choice is simply to observe rather than explain. The storytellers were remarkably comfortable with uncertainty, preserving wonder instead of trying to solve every mystery. Another reason these legends have endured is that they invite us to slow down. The hidden world rarely revealed itself to those who hurried past without noticing. It appeared beside quiet streams, beneath ancient trees, in drifting mist, or along lonely paths where people walked with patient eyes and attentive hearts. Even today, those are often the places where we find ourselves breathing a little more deeply and noticing beauty that might otherwise be overlooked. There is also something deeply comforting in the thought that we share the world rather than possess it. The hidden people remind us that every landscape may hold stories beyond our own experience. Whether those unseen neighbors exist only in imagination or somewhere just beyond ordinary sight is a question each listener may answer for themselves. Either way, the stories encourage generosity, curiosity, and a sense of belonging within a much larger world. Perhaps that is why these tales continue to speak to us despite the passing of centuries. The kingdoms have changed, the languages have evolved, and the people telling the stories have come and gone, yet the hills remain. Forests still whisper beneath the wind. Streams continue their patient journey toward the sea, and moonlight still settles softly upon ancient stones, exactly as it did for those first storytellers gathered around evening fires. The hidden world has never demanded belief. It asks only for imagination. It invites us to look at familiar places with a little more curiosity, to greet old landscapes as though they still remember the footsteps of countless generations, and to accept that not every beautiful thing needs to be fully explained before it can be appreciated. In many ways, that may be the greatest magic of all. The fairy stories remind us that wonder is not something left behind in childhood. It is a way of seeing the world that remains available throughout our lives, quietly waiting whenever we pause long enough to listen to the wind in the trees, the murmur of flowing water, or the gentle silence that settles over the hills beneath a sky filled with stars. As our evening together draws toward its final moments, we begin the peaceful walk back through the landscapes that have welcomed us throughout this journey. The hidden world grows quiet once more, not because it has disappeared, but because it is content to remain where it has always been, patiently waiting beyond the edge of ordinary sight for those willing to wander with open hearts and unhurried steps. Our path now turns gently toward home, following quiet trails that have carried us through so many ancient landscapes during our evening together. The moon hangs low above the hills, casting its soft silver light across fields, forests, lakes, and distant mountains. The air is cool and peaceful, and every familiar landmark seems to offer one last quiet farewell before the night begins to give way to morning. We pass once more by the ancient fairy mounds, resting peacefully beneath blankets of grass that have grown undisturbed for countless generations. They appear no different than they did when our journey began, keeping their stories safely hidden beneath the earth. Whether they shelter forgotten kingdoms or simply remind us of the enduring power of imagination, they remain places worthy of quiet respect. The forests greet us with the same gentle welcome they offered earlier in the evening. Tall oaks, graceful birches, and fragrant pines sway softly in the night breeze, while moonlight filters through their branches to paint delicate patterns across the woodland floor. Somewhere within those quiet woods, the hidden people continue their lives beyond ordinary sight, content to let the trees guard their secrets a little longer. Soon we arrive once again at the clear streams and peaceful lakes that reflected both the stars above and the mysteries below. The water continues its endless journey, flowing with the same quiet patience that inspired generations of storytellers. Beside those tranquil shores, we remember the gentle figures who were said to appear in moments of stillness, reminding us that nature often speaks most clearly when we take the time to listen. Far beyond the lakes, the mountains rise beneath the fading moonlight, their peaks wrapped in soft bands of mist. Somewhere among those high places, the hidden paths still wind through the valleys, and the quiet guardians of the hills continue their timeless watch. The mountains ask for nothing except respect, rewarding those who travel thoughtfully with moments of breathtaking beauty that remain long after the journey has ended. The scent of the sea returns upon the breeze, carrying with it memories of rugged cliffs, quiet beaches, and gentle waves rolling endlessly toward the shore. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Selkies still swim beneath the moonlit water, belonging completely to the rhythm of the tides that have shaped their stories for centuries. Their songs, like so many of the old legends, fade gently into memory without ever truly disappearing. The peaceful cottages we visited earlier now rest in complete silence. Their windows have grown dark, their hearths have cooled, and only the stars remain awake above the sleeping countryside. It is comforting to imagine that somewhere beyond the old hedgerows, unseen neighbors continue their quiet lives, sharing the same moonlit landscape while asking for nothing more than kindness, courtesy, and a little room for mystery. As we continue walking, the eastern horizon begins to soften almost imperceptibly. The stars still shine overhead, yet the first hint of approaching dawn quietly touches the edge of the sky. The hidden world does not vanish with the coming light. Instead, it gently withdraws, returning to the quiet places where it has always been remembered, waiting patiently until another evening invites curious hearts to wander once again. Perhaps that has always been the true gift of these ancient stories. They encourage us to move through the world a little more gently, to notice beauty that might otherwise pass unseen, and to remember that every old forest, every quiet stream, every windswept hill, and every lonely stretch of coastline carries memories far older than ourselves. Whether we think of those memories as history, folklore, or something that quietly lives between the two matters less than the sense of wonder they awaken within us. Now our journey has come full circle. The paths grow familiar once more, the lantern burns a little lower, and the night has offered all the stories it wished to share. Behind us, the hidden world of the Fae settles peacefully into silence beneath the fading moon, carrying on its timeless rhythms just beyond the edge of ordinary sight. And perhaps the next time you find yourself walking through an ancient forest, pausing beside a quiet spring, standing upon a lonely hillside, or watching moonlight shimmer across a still lake, you may remember this evening together. You may find yourself smiling at the thought that the old storytellers believed such places were never truly empty. They were simply waiting for someone willing to slow their steps, open their imagination, and listen. Until then, may your own path be peaceful, your heart remain full of wonder, and your dreams carry you gently through landscapes where the old stories are always waiting to be discovered once again. As our journey through the hidden world of the Fae comes to a close, I'd like to thank you for spending part of your evening with me here on the Sleepy Legends channel. I hope these ancient stories have brought you a sense of peace, a touch of wonder, and perhaps a gentle path toward a restful night's sleep. If you enjoyed tonight's journey, I would truly appreciate it if you would take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Sleepy Legends channel. Your support helps the channel continue to grow and allows me to keep sharing these quiet explorations of mythology, folklore, history, and the world's most fascinating legends. If there is a legend, culture, or historical mystery you'd enjoy exploring on a future evening, I'd love to hear your suggestions in the comments below. Thank you again for joining me. Until our paths cross again, may your nights be peaceful, your dreams be gentle, and your imagination always find its way back to the old stories. Good night, and I'll see you again soon on the Sleepy Legends channel.